had that emotional scene with Aunt May where he's like, I am responsible.
Yeah.
And Peter at that time, I think that they do a flashback to the guy who killed Uncle Ben, who we think killed Uncle Ben up until that point. You had two films where the emotion was put on that is what happened. For the third film, for them to be like, no, that's all that you missed this bit. It is again, that is one of the early instances for me of retroactive retconning.
Yes.
Which I'm championing to be called James Cromwelling because of
Fallen Kingdom.
Because of Fallen Kingdom.
Yeah.
But we'll keep it as that for now. Hello and welcome to Two Reels podcast. I'm your host Liam Reedy. I'm here with Harry Harding and we are talking about the Sam Rami Spider-Man trilogy, part of our Spider-Man month here on Two Reels podcast. And we are at the very beginning of the month where we're leading up to the podcast of Spider-Man No Way Home. And we can't wait to talk about it when it finally releases. If you're new here, thank you very much for giving us a listen. If you're returning, thank you again. If you like anything we're doing here, follow us on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter, or any socials that you use, and that's at Two Reels Podcast. Now let's get into what we're here to talk about. So, I think after the initial reveal of Spider-Man No Way Home, I feel like it was something that just kind of made sense that we should do all of the Spider-Man movies in the month of December when it's releasing. Now it's releasing a couple of days early. No Way Home
in the UK.
Yeah, where me and Sam were talking about this on a previous podcast. There's been certain things that we've talked about, and then immediately something to do with what we'd been talking about has manifested itself. The examples being, because we were doing Red Notice recently, Sam was the one who was like, oh, they should do a film with Ryan Reynolds and The Rock. And then, honestly, a few days later, it was like The Rock announces Red Notice coming out on Netflix. Another one, which was Nightmare Before Christmas. We were saying how terrible it would be for there to be a live-action Nightmare Before Christmas the same day as they announced that Billie Eilish is going to play Sally in a Nightmare Before Christmas live-action.
You're joking.
I'm not joking you.
That sounds like something that you and I would make up.
We did.
In jest.
We did.
As a spoof.
We genuinely did. Me, Sam, and Joe were just like, "Cool, wouldn't it be rubbish?" Because it's such a great stop motion movie.
Honestly, the next thing they'll be announcing Back to the Future 4 with The Rock and Zac Efron.
I mean, it would only make goddamn sense if it did. And this is another one of those things that we were talking in the group about doing the plans for watching Spider-Man No Way Home and doing the podcast so we can get it to you as quick as possible. And then and I was like, well, I'm going to, because it's near Christmas, I'm going to my parents at these times. And then immediately I checked on Twitter and it's been announced two days earlier when we just had the plan down to a T.
That reminds me, actually, I need to talk to you about Christmas.
Right, okay.
Well, we'll do it off air.
Yeah. I feel like we started off this Spider-Man podcast for the Raimi trilogy. And it just gets into just a bit of a chit chat about our lives.
What are we doing for Christmas?
Our Christmas plans, and our Christmas plans this month.
Yeah. Of
December being Spider-Man, but we're doing a whole month's worth of Spider-Man movies.
That's right.
And I mean, I'm having different co-hosts for each podcast, but I have to watch each and every one of them. I mean, I feel like Sam is probably watching them all as well. Joe, yes. I don't think is probably going to bother. I don't think you are either, which is totally fine. But as the host, I have to watch them all, and it's thrown up some mixed results.
I can see that.
But least of all, with this trilogy, if I'm being honest,
in that you mean that out of the three And by three, I mean the three interpretations,
iterations of Spider-Man.
This one, you feel like has changed your mind the least.
Yes,
it's the same as it was when you were a kid.
Yeah, I feel like my feelings on this trilogy have only incrementally changed, rather than we will get to those other podcasts. Not to spoil it all on the first day, but there was some ups and downs that I will get onto later in the month. But yeah, I mean, revisiting these films, because I hadn't seen 2 in forever.
Same.
I hadn't seen 1 in a few years.
Same.
And I'd say, yeah, a couple of years as well for 3, maybe like in between.
I feel like 3 is on TV more in the
Oh
UK.
yes, yeah.
It's on like ITV2 every couple of months, on like a Sunday afternoon after Bond.
Yeah. Do you remember when they? Not to get way too far off topic, but do you remember when they showed every Bond on ITV? I'm talking like years and years ago.
I do remember that. Yeah.
That was great. I feel like they've still got the rights to some of those Bonds that they showed 20 years ago, and they just like throw You Only Live Twice up on there.
They do. I literally the other day I caught Moonraker. It was like a random Saturday afternoon.
Yeah.
On like ITV4 or something.
And it's very rare that I watch TV these days. So it's like when I do throw it on and there's a nice surprise like that.
Welcome to the James Bond podcast.
Welcome to each and every Bond podcast for 2022. So Sam Raimi's trilogy, the initial introduction of Spider-Man to mainstream audiences in cinema. I mean, there was one that I feel like it was either a direct-to-home videos 1977 Spider-Man. Honestly, I don't think I could put myself through watching it. So we start at the beginning, with 2002. I remember the hype for this movie being unreal, and obviously it's because we were a certain age.
Yeah.
But I even think even adults who were fans of comic books or action films knew that this was coming out and knew that it was a big deal.
Yeah, I can't remember which podcast it was, but I think it was a recent one. We very briefly discussed the creation of the 12A certificate by the BB FC over here in the UK, and
Big Boy Football Club.
I think someone said that it had been created as a result of I remember, it was your Matrix podcast.
Yeah, I thought it was because of the Matrix Reloaded.
Yeah, but it was actually Spider-Man, because I remember at the time, and this is going to age me, but I remember at the time when it was announced that Spider-Man was going to be a 12, I was really upset.
Obviously.
And I think of the sort of I don't know if it was the studio or the cinemas, they were like, if we release this film as a 12, we're going to see a massive loss.
Yeah, but you're just leaving money on the table, aren't you?
Having said that, at the time, I obviously was amazing, and another thing as well, because I think it was before Spider-Man when they released Mission Impossible 2, which I was absolutely buzzing for. So I was a huge fan of 1. That was a 15.
Yes.
And I wasn't 15 at the time, and I cried.
Did you?
Yeah, because I was still a kid, and I loved Mission Impossible so much, and I couldn't go see it cinema. I was so upset, I cried. Shows how much of a loser I am. But and then when Spider-Man came out, I was like, no, this can't.
It's happening again.
But I must admit, I mean, watching it back the other day,
does it warrant a 12?
Definitely.
Yeah.
I think it's quite violent, and it's got like blood in it.
It does. Does have a lot of rouge.
And death. People get killed.
Yes.
Not necessarily. Well, I was going to say not intentionally, but on Spider-Man's part. But the Green Goblin straight up murders people.
He does. But there's one bit which is in a. I know we will get to it, but it is in a. One of them is in a very cartoony way, no blood, but it's still kind
Oh
of like.
yeah, I know what you mean. It's like the like it was like in Mars Attacks when they get
Yes,
zapped.
exactly like that. Yeah,
Yeah,
we will get to that. That is in the first movie.
but I mean, still though, I mean, like the fight scenes are very are quite gritty. Well, some of them are quite gritty and bloody.
Yeah, especially the end fight, I believe.
Yeah,
You know,
and I think there is
probably where that 12 is
I
coming
think
into
blood
play.
does play a part in the classification.
It probably did a lot more in 2002.
Yeah,
I probably think it a little bit less these days.
yeah, yeah. I guess so. But I did. Maybe it's I don't know. But I've definitely seen or read or heard somewhere that uh, you can get away with having a lower rating if you don't show any blood. I don't know what it is about blood
Mm,
that makes it that much more graphic or shocking.
yeah.
But you can, for example, you can have like a stabbing scene, but if no blood is shown,
Yes. Yeah.
you
Yeah.
can get away with. That's why there's a lot of action films out there that are like PGs.
Yeah.
Like Indiana Jones films, I think are PGs.
Not a lot of blood in
They're
it. Might be
quite
just like like a bit of blood like around the
like a
mouth
little
or on the top of the
drip.
head.
Yeah, just a little scratch.
Yeah.
But generally you don't see it. But yeah, yeah. I do think it should have been a 12. Uh, yeah. I can't remember. Oh, I remember. I once read somewhere. I can't. I don't know who the guy was, but he was the head of the BBFC back in the 90s, and he said that his biggest regret in his whole career, and this is a career spanning decades,
Mm.
his biggest regret was making Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves a PG
Why?
because it's really violent
It is
and
quite funny.
bloody.
Yes.
I think they were going to give it a 15, and it ended up getting passed for a PG. Obviously, again,
Yeah.
motivated by money, money over morals, I guess. But having said that, I was a kid at the time, and I'm glad that they did because it's Spider-Man.
Yeah.
I mean, I must admit, and I'm probably going to get some hate for this, but I've never read a comic book in my life or a graphic novel.
Fair enough.
I don't really know anything about the comics. So when I do these reviews of movies that are comic book adaptations, I judge them purely on the film, not on like how faithful they are.
Mm.
Which is why I'm a big fan of films like V for Vendetta and Watchmen that I know some people think are awful or whatever. But
I feel like with some of those, probably the two that you just mentioned, V for Vendetta and Watchmen, only really got a bad rap, like a really bad rap, from their creator,
yeah,
Alan Moore, who is famously anti-Hollywood,
yeah,
famously
that's
says
right.
that most of his comic book films are like unfilmable, like unadaptable to the medium of cinema.
Mm,
And Watchmen I really like, and Viva Vendetta has only really got better with age.
I agree.
So when you say people give it a bad rap, I feel like it's either diehards who are on
Die
Alan
Hard,
Moore's
yeah,
who are on Alan Moore's side, who
yeah,
agree with him, and then people who are just like, it's a good movie,
yeah.
you know. So
But I mean, I had watched. I obviously being a '90s kid, I did watch the cartoon,
oh yeah, of
the
course, yeah,
animated series. So I did have that pre-existing
knowledge of a Spider-Man.
knowledge of like the villains
Yeah, yeah.
and the story,
The initial
characters,
base of what
the base,
Spider-Man's all
yeah.
about.
And also I was a fan.
Mm-hmm.
You know, same with X-Men, exactly the same. That another awesome cartoon from the '90s that I loved. And then when those films were made and came out around the same time,
Yes.
I was excited for them, and I had a pre-existing love for the franchise.
X-Men, another trilogy and a bit to look forward to.
Definitely.
here on Two Reels because it's a personal favourite of us both.
Agreed.
And here's the thing: I feel like waiting until the X-Men are introduced into the MCU, we could be ages before you do that. But I feel like it's probably a podcast that's closer to the horizon than that film is.
Yeah.
Spider-Man, in terms of the IP itself, in terms of it being in films, languished in development hell for about 20 years. In the 80s, it was batted about with the most noticeable name on that list of people who were trying to adapt it for the screen is James Cameron.
Yes.
What
yes.
would a James Cameron Spider-Man have actually looked like? Lots of miniatures and lots of gritty hallway scenes.
Yeah. Yeah. That's funny because James Cameron, obviously, he made Aliens,
Yes.
but he also made films like True Lies, and Terminator 1, 2. So I don't know, but I don't know if it had come out if it had come out in the 90s and was directed by James Cameron, I feel like it would have had a more of a sort of 90s Hollywood action film vibe to it.
Yeah, well, the only person to have been attached to the role as Peter Parker was actually Leonardo DiCaprio.
Really?
Yeah,
Yeah.
in his version. Yeah, originally he tried to do such in 1990 with a planned budget of $50 million. I feel like I don't think it would have worked out as.
I don't think the look. I am not an advocate for CGI and computer animation. I hate it more than I like it, but I do feel like with Spider-Man,
It is a necessity.
yeah, I don't think a Spider-Man film back then would have worked as well.
Can you imagine a Leonardo DiCaprio-driven Spider-Man with Doc Ock being played by none other than Arnold Schwarzenegger?
Of course. um. Oh, do you know what? It's weird because Leonardo DiCaprio is a phenomenal actor, and in my opinion, he's probably a better actor than all of the actors that have played Spider-Man. But does that make him the right fit for the role of Peter Parker?
No, not necessarily.
I don't think so either.
Most notably in the script, it was to have the finale happening atop the World Trade Center, where Peter reveals his identity pretty much immediately to Mary Jane. It says here in addition, the treatment was also profanity heavy, so it probably would have been a 12, maybe even a 15, and had Spider-Man and Mary Jane having sex on the Brooklyn Bridge.
Right. So yeah, definitely a sort of gritty 90s action film vibe.
It's got a very B movie. The only things I can really feel like it's kind of comparable to is like gritty action movies, like say, I don't know, like Under Siege or something, but with a comic book layer on top.
Yeah.
You know, like those. They're kind of not at the time. They weren't too schlocky, but they are now.
Yeah.
Kind of Steven Seagal movies where it's just all violence, profanity, sex.
Yeah.
With like barely any plot and just loads of action. I feel like it's that, but with a comic book kind of style slapped on top.
Yeah.
With Leonardo DiCaprio as he's coming up. This would have been pre-Titanic.
Yeah.
You know, probably, way pre any.
He would have been very young.
He would have been in.
I mean, Christ.
I mean, he would have probably been nearer the age than some of the other iterations of Peter Parker.
I'm pretty sure in the 90s, certainly in the early 90s, Leo was was a teenager.
Yeah, early 90s, I reckon.
Yeah.
Well, when did What's Eating Gilbert Grape
That's
come
what I
out?
was. Well, that
Because he was very young then.
that was
He was still
early
a child.
'90s, I think, and he was. He was what I don't know, but he was very very young in that.
Well, that came out the same year that this was starting pre-production.
Yeah, so he would have. God, he must have been what 14 or something.
So he would have been around the right age probably to play Peter Parker, closer than the majority of the people who played him, really.
Well, yes, if you're.
I mean, that's one positive in a bag of negatives to take away from this.
Yes, yes, I have an opinion about that,
Right.
but yeah.
Yeah, are you thinking it's not a good idea to have someone play the exact age of 16
I don't.
for a high school?
I think it's better, and I know I'm biased, but I think it's better to have older actors pretend that they're teenagers, because then in the the continuity of the film and the film series, they
Grow
as
into it.
characters can get older.
Yes.
Whereas if you cast someone who is age appropriate, then it's going to be years before they get to, if you want to, like, a few movies down the line, let's say you want to see a grown up Peter Parker who's in his 30s and is a fully grown man,
Which they haven't done yet.
you'd have to wait for literally
Years.
20
Yeah.
years or so. That I think it's better to cast older actors like they do in the Sam Raimi Spider-Man trilogy.
Controversially, I agree, because not to get too ahead of myself in terms of what we'll be talking about over this month, but the MCU Spider-Man, the fact that he hasn't really aged, hasn't really progressed in his life to a certain extent, is quite just annoying. It feels like it's treading for so familiar ground.
Yeah.
That I'm just like, well, it's not a waste of 3 movies, but it's a waste of progress that could have potentially happened over 3 movies, like this trilogy.
Yeah, and I know I don't want to get into it, but also with the trouble with the MCU is that everything that happens in every film is canon. So every single new plot development, no matter how small or big, matters and will affect everything. And the biggest one, obviously, that jumps out to me is the what do they call it? The blip.
Yes, yeah,
The 5-year
gap
where after Thanos' snap, and obviously Peter was one of the people who disappeared, and so when he returns 5 years later, he's the same age. So he's still the rest of the world's moved on 5 years. He's still a high school senior. I mean, how long's he going to be at high school for?
This is what I was.
When's he gonna graduate? When's he gonna go to college? When's he gonna get a job?
Well, when he wants to play the MCU Spider-Man for as long as possible, but I just think that dragging it by having it 3 movies deep.
Yeah,
I know. Being Infinity War and Endgame have stunted the growth of characters.
Yeah,
as much as I enjoy the movies, especially Infinity War, we'll get to that at some point. It has, in retrospect, stunted those who did get snapped, who did get blipped. But I think like there is progress over these 3 movies, which I don't think you really got in the other 2 iterations.
And the thing I like about the Spider-Man, the first film, is that they start in high school, but it's literally their senior year.
Yeah, and they're about to graduate.
Within about 20 minutes of the film, that they graduated. and that they're going on to, to
Other things.
And Peter's still at college during the rest of the trilogy, but that's just a part-time thing. He's also working and doing other things and going out into the world.
Yes.
Which I think was a great idea, and maybe that was the only reason they did that was because of the actors' ages. But I think it was that was a genius stroke of story writing to have, rather than have them be in high school during the whole film.
Yeah.
To have them graduate from high school straight away, because that restricts them.
Does, yeah.
You have to graduate from high school, and there's they can do anything. You can do anything.
It's
you
literally
can go anywhere.
Yeah, if they were to be in high school for the majority of the film, which Tom Holland is, it does restrict you to being like, well, he's just like skipping school the whole time.
Yeah.
Someone would be so suspicious, and then he wouldn't get away with it. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like, and
it was perfect. Tobey Maguire's Peter Parker, he got his powers at the perfect time.
Yeah, he did. Yeah. End of high school. Has to think about the future.
Yeah.
He's like, oh, I don't know what I'm going to do for a job.
Yeah.
Whereas even Andrew Garfield's, I don't even remember what he does.
I've only seen those two
well,
films
I don't
once.
remember, like, because he does graduate at the beginning of the second one, but I'm just like, I don't think there's really much. Does
he become an investigative reporter?
No.
Or something?
No. But I'm just like, that doesn't come up in that iteration of Spider-Man. It doesn't come up where he's like, I'm worried about like where I'm going to get money to live.
Well,
whereas Peter Parker in this one is like ferociously poor. Like,
so many things. I mean, so many things the Peter Parker character that I want to dive into. But I'll tell you what. When we sat down to watch that first film, the first thing that struck me immediately was how fantastic Danny Elfman's score is.
It is iconic, I think.
And you got to remember, Danny Elfman, he wrote the score for Batman, so he's already done one iconic superhero
score.
theme tune.
Yeah,
which in my opinion is just as recognisable and iconic as the Superman theme. If you are a Batman or Superman fan, you hear that Batman score, you immediately know what it is.
Exactly.
And then he goes and writes another one, which in my opinion, is just as recognisable, and I think now quite iconic, because I think it's quite hard nowadays to write a score for a superhero that is instantly recognisable.
Yeah.
And associated with that character.
I feel like the Spider-Man score, the Spider-Man theme, specifically, not just the score. The score's good, but the theme specifically.
I do sort of specifically mean the theme. Yeah.
I feel like there are lots of good ones out there. There's only, I believe, maybe 2 or 3 since that film that are even slightly as recognisable. One that's actually just for the Avengers, so it's a group of people. It's not necessarily just for...
Yeah, I know the one you mean.
For one.
Yeah.
And then the other one is Hans Zimmer for the Batman.
Controversially, I actually agree with you.
Yeah.
His Batman Begins theme.
Yes.
They
use
iconic.
it throughout the whole trilogy for a reason, because it's so fucking good. You don't replace it.
But notice how rare that is.
Yeah. They've had one every 10 years.
Considering how many comic book films there are.
Yeah.
I mean, I think I genuinely do believe. I think short of John Williams's Superman theme and Danny Elfman's own Batman theme. I think the Spider-Man theme is
Like,
number 3.
yeah, number 3, yeah.
In comic book adaptation theme tunes.
Once again, controversially, I have to agree. You know, that's so rare for us to do.
Which amazingly, considering he's sort of mainly thought of as being sort of associated with Tim Burton and sort of gothic horror sort of inspired films, makes Danny Elfman the ultimate superhero.
He gets so much.
Score.
He gets so much bad, not bad press, but he gets like the piss taken out of him a little bit. Danny Elfman, mainly by Family Guy, I feel, but and you know, people with that same sense of humor for having like an almost like overly unserious, jovial kind of, you know, whimsical, but then like sometimes dark kind of like music.
Yeah, but things if you're a massive music and specifically movie music dork like me, you will notice that a lot of these composers have a very similar style.
Yes,
you
yeah.
listen to John Williams. You know, he's considered quite rightly probably the greatest film composer of all time. A lot of his scores sound very similar because he uses the same sort of string based big orchestras, and a lot of these composers, Hans Zimmer, Danny Elfman, John Williams, they have a style,
Yeah, of
and
course.
so their scores do sound the same. But I like that because sometimes you sit down and watch a film, you can instantly recognise who the composer is. You think, oh, this is a Hans Zimmer. This is how I can
of
tell.
course, yeah.
You can, you know, or this is a, you know, this is Danny Elfman because it's got that sort of fantasy, sort of gothic-y, fantastical sort of feel. But yeah, I just wanted to do a shout out because I feel like film composers and scores often get overlooked a lot, and
Danny Elfman's one is great, and it is. You say like obviously he did do Batman. Did he do Returns as well?
Yeah,
I think he did.
Yeah.
After that, I think it was game over. But they are like wholly different because they are two very different decades, late 80s, early 90s, compared to like turn of the new millennium. He hasn't gone back to the well to do, you know, oh, it's a Batman theme, but it's about Spider-Man. Do you know what I mean? There's no connotations there with Batman. You can hear similar takes, but it is so different that, you know, you're not thinking about Batman when you hear the theme.
No,
it's holistically Spider-Man.
I agree because when you listen to the Batman theme, it's dark and moody and atmospheric and sort of powerful. When you listen to the Spider-Man theme,
it's a lot more strings.
Yeah, and it's
makes sense.
It's more sort of hopeful, but also kind of regretful, and it goes in and out of sounding like heroic and inspirational, and then going into a sort of more melancholic tone, which perfectly sums up the sort of these films,
the origin of Spider-Man,
and you know, Spider-Man, Peter Parker, his struggles. So yeah, great theme tune, and as soon as you hear that that opening the opening bit of the theme, I can't remember how it goes now.
There's a bit of like, is there like a bongo in there? Where it's like, yeah.
Or whatever it is. Maybe we'll play it.
And the fact that they do it over the three films, it doesn't change.
Yeah.
The opening of the movie doesn't change.
But as soon as that Sony logo appears, and
Yeah.
you just hear the
Yeah, it has like a rising in a violin, I think, or
yeah,
a certain string
and
instrument.
you're like, oh, this is it, like.
And then it's like,
Yes.
and then they have like the
That's it.
the web string
Yes.
go like where it's like
Yes.
really zoomed in.
They don't do that anymore. They did that for X-Men as well. They don't do that anymore, and I don't know why, because I really like that. I feel like they don't do it because it's cheesy.
Oh, the opening to these Spider-Man movies, as well as I think it happens in I think the first two X-Men films, where it's all like graphics.
Yeah, graphics.
It's
Webs,
all graphics to do with
pictures,
to do with what film you're seeing as well. Like obviously Spider-Man's is all webs, and then like the X-Men one is
DNA.
all like God,
great.
they are great openings to movies.
They don't make them like that anymore.
They don't make them like they used to. Say two old men. So
I tell you what. But no, as soon as I hear that music, do you know what I think? I think I'm gonna dig on this.
So the first movie released in 2002. I touched on it a little bit. The hype for this was quite unreal, and I pretty much is this the perfect origin story for a superhero? Is it the blueprint for origin stories of superheroes going forward?
I think it is.
Yeah.
And I think I look at there are two other films that come to mind that I compare it to, and that is Superman and Batman Begins. And I feel like in Superman he grows up, he's a teenager, he travels to the South Pole, wherever it is, finds the fortress, and then he finds the Green Crystal, and then he just sort of turns into Christopher Reeve and flies towards the camera in the suit, and that's it. They just sort of skip. And then in Batman Begins, I feel like it gets dragged way out for my liking.
Yeah.
It doesn't become Batman till like 40 minutes into the film. Whereas in this film...
Which is not the most egregious time it has taken for a superhero film, but I understand your logic of being like, can we just...
Yeah.
Here's the thing, I agree with, especially with Superman, like...
Yeah.
There is no, like... I don't think there is like a decent enough like montage of like him getting from one point of being not Superman to the point of being Superman.
Yeah.
It's been a long time since I've seen the movie, but I understand. I do remember what you're talking about. And with Batman Begins, I do pretty much agree, but there was enough like teasing beforehand, just about to keep me going. It's not the most amount of time you spent waiting for someone to become the hero. I feel like there's a couple of MCU movies where it's over an hour and you're just like, well, I've just wasted my fucking hour.
Yeah, it's basically the whole movie that they spend becoming the hero.
And I'm just that they do that, I feel like, because they've got the parachute of being able to say, well, there's another movie in the MCU coming out.
There's going to be another 3 or 4 films.
So I think with this is it is just so this is something I said to you post we watched Spider-Man 1. It's so lean. The movie is lean. There is nothing that you can cut, and it's not overly long. So much so that you're just like, well, it starts off with the origin because they're on the field trip.
Yes.
Then he's within it's like 10 minutes, maybe even less, maybe even 8.
Yeah.
He's already been bitten by the spider.
Yeah.
You've got it is a little bit it is a very quick kind of like, even then you kind of know who Spider-Man is.
Yeah.
Even though it hadn't been told in cinema like 3, 4, 5 times by this point. Through just public consciousness, through the lexicon of fucking entertainment. You know who Spider-Man is. So although they were like, well, you have to do an origin story, it's literally the first time in cinema we've been doing it. You'd be remiss to just skip that, and it would just not make sense. But they were like, it's just going to be bang, it's just going to be bang, it's just going to be bang, it's just going to be... He gets bit. He's at home, and he just like, his body's just changing, freaking out. He gets up. He does he does the thing where he's just like, holy shit, I've changed. And then it's just like onto Peter Parker's like problems, and then like it's just, there is no like waiting around. There's no real cliches, because at the time there wasn't many comic book origin stories, so there wasn't many tropes to be like retreading. Like the one I think that I might have discussed with you, it might have been Sam, was the one where it's been in at least 3-4 other films where they're like, I've got powers now and I'm really strong, so I'm like making a mess everywhere. It happens in Andrew Garfield's one. It happens in X-Men Origins Wolverine. Less said about that, the better. Where it's just like, oh, I don't know how to work this. Like, my body's a bit of a fucking weird thing now.
Sorry, I didn't. That last film you said, I don't know what that is.
Not seen that one, though.
I've never heard of that before.
No, nor have I. And, so it goes, X-Men 3, and then the Wolverine.
Correct.
Yeah, sweet.
Yeah.
So it's all very much it's all very well done. That's just.
But it doesn't. At the same time, it doesn't feel rushed.
No, not at all. No.
You get it establishes the characters. Peter Parker, Harry, MJ, Aunt May and Uncle Ben, Norman Osborn. They all get established very quickly.
All within 15 minutes.
And all the relationships are established in the small sort of dialogue and exchanges of dialogue that they all have, and and it doesn't feel rushed at all, but it really is quick.
Yes,
and that is that is very good. I mean, like you say, we have the we have literally one scene at high school where he catches the food on the tray.
Mm-hmm.
Can I just say as well that was all real? Apparently,
what?
That was an actual take.
What?
Him catching that stuff on the tray.
That's crazy. If that's true.
Yeah, but I don't think they actually went from.
Oh no, yeah, I know.
I'm sure people were just dropping it.
Yes, yeah.
But that was actually him catching the
stuff
food
on a plate.
and
on a tray, sorry.
He did also, apparently they like stopped filming for 3 months, so when they the scene where he wakes up in the morning and he's all muscle,
he's buff, yeah,
that's just he trained to put on the muscle.
Yeah.
So again, that's all sort of real. It's not like CGI or.
Of course, yeah. Yeah. I don't think CGI in 2001 would have been very good if they just tried to put CGI muscles on him. Yeah. I feel that would have looked rubbish.
But
if that's true, that is very good in terms of. I feel like I've seen behind the scenes where it's. I thought it was like on wires and stuff, but he still catches it on the tray. Is that right?
I think that's what I mean. Like it was live, is what I'm saying.
Yeah. It's not CGI.
It's not fake.
Oh, what they would do these days is literally just have him wobble a tray about, and they'd all add it in
front
post
of a green screen.
Yeah.
But it's I mean, it's. I do think that Spider-Man is like the benchmark for superhero origin films. I think it's very good. It's very quick, but it doesn't feel rushed. And he sort of gets into being Spider-Man fairly quickly. And like you said, the film is so compact that it works. It's not too long and therefore everything's dragged out and takes ages, but at the same time it's not rushed, or as is the case with some comic book movies nowadays, they don't even bother doing an origin. They're just already the superhero from the start.
It's because um the genre is so let's say it's a deep pool of water at the moment. So it's, for you to do an origin story every time, it would get kind of exhausting.
Yeah,
And I think me personally, I've reached the point where I'm probably middling. I'm probably in the middle of my superhero fatigue in terms of not just the MCU, but just in terms of films in general, cinema in general. Just because it's been well over 10 years of just the majority of the action films you go see. Majority of the films probably a lot of people see, as you can see by the numbers when they get released, online and stuff. It is just superhero films.
oh, I know, mate.
And I feel like when the MCU started, I was 17 years of age, so I was well into being their target audience. And they had a good build, and they have had good films. They've had some great films. The genre has had some great films, but honestly, I feel like we're in a slump post Endgame, which is, again, it doesn't matter really which company, MCU or not. That I went to see Eternals. That had an origin story, because it basically is a complete origin story. And that was fucking trash. So, it was
Spoiler alert for those who haven't listened to the Eternals podcast. There,
God, it was fucking shit.
I
Not to get too much onto that, but yeah, the origin story in a comic book movie is so overdone that there's an oversaturation.
it is now.
But
But
here's the thing: if this was an origin story that came out now, I'd still enjoy it.
yeah. To be honest, I got my superhero movie fatigue.
Oh, here we go.
What? No.
I thought there was going to be a Dark Knight reference.
Before the MCU even begun.
Really?
Oh yeah, I felt like by the latter half of the noughties, there were so many already, and it was doing my nut in. So yeah. But I'm not a comic book.
That's fair enough.
So
yeah.
So that's that. But yeah, man. And I tell you another thing as well. The impact of Spider-Man, because I know we were saying that, and it's true. I think if it wasn't for X-Men, I don't think we never would have even had the MCU.
Oh, terribly.
Comic book films wouldn't even be a big thing now. Whereas nowadays, it's like the most profitable, bankable genre in the whole of cinema. But back in 2000, it was one of the lowest.
Oh yeah.
And then X-Men came along, which was brilliant.
Literally, Blade, X-Men, and the Spider-Man films are the reason that we have the MCU.
Exactly. So I still believe that X-Men is solely responsible for that, but I feel like X-Men had a very had a sort of a fan base of loyal fans of X-Men, but not necessarily. It wasn't like a big global thing. Whereas when Spider-Man came along, that is what I think opened up the world of comic book movies to everyone, and to to Hollywood in general, to studios, producers, and then also fans, film fans who weren't previously comic book fans.
Yes.
So I think X-Men started it, but I think Spider-Man
blew the doors wide open.
Yes, and so if Spider-Man hadn't been good, it could have died there and then.
Yeah. I have no idea what the action movies would look like right now if there was no MCU or the comic book movies in general, because I know there is a range of comic book films. It's quite tight a range. It goes from gritty to over saturation, but I feel like I don't know what like just action movies would be looking like. I feel like we'd just still be in kind of a Jason Bourne adjacent era of just quick cut fight scenes with. I mean, that wouldn't be the worst thing.
I was just going to say, this is going to be really controversial. I think it would be better.
Do you think so?
I think.
Do you think Hollywood would be better without comic book films, or just the
Yeah.
MCU and our current slew?
I do. I think the quality of cinema now would be better.
Very controversial.
I know, but the 90s for me was such a, and actually and the noughties, early noughties was such a peak. I feel like that was the absolute peak of cinema, and and then it started to go downhill. Coincidentally, around about 2008. And has been slowly declining ever since. Yeah. And now it's all sky beams and CGI armies.
Got a point. We've said about this quite a lot personally, but we are in the agreement that the 2000s, early 2000s, have spoiled us, because the films of maybe from 99, and we've already established early on that 99 is probably one of the best years for films, and also now kind of in agreement that around 2003
yeah,
so the period of 99 to about 2005 is very much like you said, probably peak cinema, especially for people of our age.
I think so.
I don't think people who were born in the 60s and 70s would probably say the 80s.
I mean, I feel like that what I said is a bit harsh. It's not just the emergence of comic book films. I also think that technology has played a part in that. CGI, I think as well has played a part in the downfall of the quality of cinema.
Of current cinema.
But anyway,
but yeah, that period coincided with the first two of the movies that we're talking about today, and that's Spider-Man 1 and 2.
Yes.
Two very standout, even in the group of movies that we consider. It's probably like a mini golden age.
Yes.
Of cinema.
I do think it is. I do think it's not thought of as a golden age.
But 6 years of just like great films. I saw a video which was talking about Men in Black.
Yeah.
Which just falls out of this category.
Well, I think it was more 10 years. I think it was more sort of 95 to 05.
Yeah.
So there's like a decade.
Yeah, this video was talking about how there are certain films that are the Hollywood blockbuster machine at its worst and most egregious, and Men in Black was just the blockbuster machine getting a few elements together that basically created a really good blockbuster movie. And it is hard to recreate that, as you saw with like Men in Black 2 is kind of like average. 3, that's way out of, that was just kind of studio cinema at its worst. And I feel like it is in that kind of bracket that we just talked about, where those years were blockbusters at their best because they got the correct elements and it was just executed so well. One of those is the rise of CGI being used in a good way. The CGI is good, but especially for the time where it was used in moderation.
Yes, it was good, but it was good because it was used sparingly. It wasn't, the computer animation wasn't great. Some of it is laughable, like in The Mummy Returns.
Still love the film.
But the film's so good that it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And it was only used for that end bit where the Rock is like a half scorpion thing.
Yeah, well, we'll get to that.
Yeah, welcome to the Mummy Returns podcast.
only what, like 40
Well,
odd minutes in.
40 minutes in, and we haven't even finished talking about one.
No, that's fine. That's fine. But we're talking about it as a whole, which is, I think,
Yeah.
is good. But so yeah, the use of CGI in this movie, the CGI in certain bits does not hold up at all. And the bit in the end where he's swinging, like the end shot that
Yes.
the I Heart America shot.
The iconic bit, yeah.
That looks great.
Yeah.
There's certain bits in this. It is a little bit hit and miss with the CGI, but at the time, they were just doing it for the shots that they couldn't do with the human actors.
Exactly. Like I think the one that stood out for me was where it was the bird's eye shot of him jumping over the roofs.
Yeah,
and you can clearly see that it's a cartoon, a computer animated Tobey Maguire. But
yes.
like you just said, because he's not in his Spider-Man outfit, so you can't really hide that. And to get a bird's eye shot of Tobey Maguire leaping up from one New York building to another,
Yeah.
you can't do that unless it's computer animated.
That is true.
And you have to use the technology that is available to you in 2002.
The only other alternative to doing a shot like that is to speed up the frame rate. And I don't like it when they do that. You notice the most noticeable example that's quite easy to tell is, say, at the midway point in Ghostbusters 1, where they drive the Ecto 1 out of the garage, out of the hall, and it drives off, and everything's just sped up because the car just doesn't drive that fast.
Yeah.
So when things like that, and it's all stuttery because it's like they've just sped the footage up and the frame rate isn't quite right. That would be the only way to do that shot if you were using Tobey Maguire, and it would just look wrong. It would look dated and cheap.
Yeah.
So you do have to just weigh up your options.
Yeah.
And just go with a CGI, and the shot is like a couple of seconds long.
Exactly. But I think for the time, generally I think it looks good, and certainly the action scenes are they're for as far as I am aware, they're not CGI. They're all they're stunt work. Especially that
a lot of it, yeah.
That end fight in the
abandoned
warehouse. Whatever.
Oh, that's majority, yeah.
You can tell it's not computer animated.
Yeah, that's why it hits emotionally a bit better, because it's just like you're not taken out of it by CGI stunt work, computer animation.
Yeah,
it's all very gritty. Like their suits are busted up, and that's another reason why you see their faces so that you can see their emotion in these scenes. It's kind of a bit of a trope with superhero movies that they're if they're wearing a mask, but by the end of the final fight in the film, they're all busted up and they take their helmet off because you have to show a little bit more emotion for the final fight.
They do too much of that now, which is kind of annoying. Takes away from the impact of it. Like when Michael Keaton took his mask off at the end of Batman Returns,
it was such an outrageous
moment. Yeah, because it was like, oh, Batman's taking his mask off.
Now they do it all the time.
Now they do it all the time,
just because they want the actor to be shown
to get a shot of their face. Yeah, but but at least in Spider-Man they do it. They do it. They only really do that at the end, and it's and their justification for doing it is that it's been like burned and ripped.
In the first one, exactly. And in the second one, he does it to show Octavius that it's Peter Parker, someone who he knows. For a reason. And even in, I think even in 3, it happens for a similar reason. So, with Spider-Man movies, it's not just because the character wears a mask and it's Robert Downey Jr. and we're paying him a load of money.
Yeah,
have him take his helmet off.
Yeah.
Don't like that. It's got to have some emotional weight to it.
Yeah, Spider-Man 1 is just, I think it's just great. It's a great origin story. It's a great overall comic book film. It's got a great villain,
Yes.
a compelling villain as well. I mean, Willem Dafoe is brilliant. I mean, he's terrifying just by himself,
I
let
know.
alone as the Green Goblin.
Him just as Norman Osborn is like, I wouldn't want to fucking be in a room with him.
No, he's very intimidating and
Yeah.
scary.
So with having him as the initial villain, you know, we'll get onto you know, later in the month be getting to his return, but it is only testament that he returns, as well as Alfred Molina, that they have chosen them as like the main two to bring back pretty much.
because they're iconic.
I know you might be like, oh well, they're bringing XYZ. You know, there's apparently like they're bringing Sandman back and a few others from the Amazing Spider-Man, but they haven't featured even slightly prominently compared to you know even Jamie Foxx as Electro
Yeah.
hasn't featured. I know there's a trailer coming out today, which I'm you know obviously going to watch. And I'll be saying these famous last words that Jamie Foxx hasn't been in much material at all, and he'll feature heavily in this fucking trailer because that's just how it works in two reels. Yeah, we seem to manifest shit. But you know, they featured Doc Ock and now featuring more Green Goblin because they are so iconic, and they brought them back for a reason because they are just so great. You know,
Yeah.
especially in this first one. It not only has a great villain, but also having this story of Harry Osborn transitioning from, you know, Peter Parker's friend to eventual Green Goblin in the third movie is a good arc that starts off here.
Yeah.
So, you know, having Green Goblin, it makes sense to have it as the first villain, and they executed it great. You know, one of the best villains I think for a long time after.
I completely agree. I mean,
that's even with having Doc Ock, Alfred Molina's Doc Ock in the second movie.
yeah, I know I think we were saying in the Venom podcast that Venom is like the Joker of Venom is the Spider-Man, like the Joker is the Batman. But I feel like it's the Green Goblin.
Yeah,
and it's Willem Dafoe's Green Goblin.
Yeah.
He is the definitive Spider-Man villain.
He's actually the one I'm most excited to see in No Way Home.
Same.
And that includes having Doc Ock, and he's like another personal favourite. But he just Willem Dafoe just edges it out for me.
He's
his laugh is just iconic.
It's great. I love the goleming he does with himself.
Oh fuck yeah, that's great. Which, you know, was a year after Goleming.
Yeah.
Oh, actually, no, that was the same year.
It's before, because Goleming was Two Towers.
Two Towers, yeah.
But no, he's great, and he seamlessly portrays both, you know, the Norman Osborn and the sort of Green Goblin version of Norman when he does that mirror scene. I'm sure that's just him acting.
Oh yeah, 100%
to the mirror.
Yeah.
They don't do it. They don't do any camera tricks because he's just talking in the mirror and they're just filming it from each perspective.
Yeah.
Brilliant. And there's so many themes in this film as well. There's so many story threads and I mean there's too many to even get into. But you know, there's just as I mentioned before, the character relationships, you know, like Harry sort of has a sort of loveless relationship with his father, and he's you know, he's trying to impress him, but it's obvious that his father sort of prefers Peter and sees Peter as the sort of son he wish he had, because he's like
I thought you were going to say the son he never had.
No, but he probably would say that.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there's some resentment and jealousy there, but obviously they're best friends. And then Peter sort of looks at Norman as like, oh, he's like the dad he never had,
Yep, yep.
and he's also into science, so it's like,
Kindred spirits, basically.
yeah, and
They have to be villains. They
there's
have to
so
be
many of
enemies.
these little relationships, you know. MJ with she like comes from an abusive household and that, but she's like the popular girl at school, but she wants to like run away and become an actress and stuff, but then she doesn't make it and she ends up working in a cafe. Oh god, that hit home, I could tell you
Yeah.
that.
Sorry, mate.
You know, and you know, but then obviously then Harry like courts MJ and ends up dating her, even though he knows that Peter likes her, and there's just so, and it's just so many there's so many of these beautiful character story threads that are developed as the series go on,
Yeah.
and
It's not just rushed in the movie
not
to
at
get
all,
to get to a point.
not at all.
You know, that you have to wait for the ultimate the ultimate arc of Harry becoming Green Goblin
Exactly.
over 3 movies.
Exactly. Some of them don't even pay off. Peter and MJ don't even hook up till the second film. Harry doesn't become the Goblin until the third film.
Yeah.
And you know, and there's so many of these arcs, but obviously the one for me that stands out, and I think ironically, I think one of the most iconic scenes in the film, and it's not even a Spider-Man scene. It's the scene with Uncle Ben in the car
Yeah,
outside the library when he says those immortal
yeah.
lines that sort of define the whole trilogy, and you know everything.
They define Spider-Man in general.
I think they define most comic book films since then. That mantra
Yeah.
is basically what all comic book films and heroes sort of live by
Yeah.
now.
Remember, with great power comes great responsibility.
It is quite poignant, and again, it is iconic because whenever you're watching that scene, you even just hear the words, like,
Oh, it gives
you're
me
always just
goosebumps,
like
mate.
Spider-Man. You're always just like, yeah, you're always thrown back to it, and yeah, I feel like that scene is low key iconic.
Yes,
Do you know what I mean? Like, it's not going to be in a top. It's not going to be in a top 10 against like I'll Be Back. You know,
Obviously,
but if you're talking about comic book films, iconic scenes in comic book films, it should be up there.
But you know what I like about that is it's not
It's not them in costume.
it's not a catchphrase.
No.
It's a philosophy. It's a logic, and it defines the whole film and the whole series, and more so than anything else, it defines the character of Peter Parker / Spider-Man, and it's what that whole not only that whole film, but I think the whole trilogy is about, with you know the responsibility of being Spider-Man, having this gift, and you know the sacrifices that have to be made. It's so iconic, and there's a reason that it's still said today, and it's still remembered, because it was so spot on. And also the thing I really like about that scene as well is I really like, and I mean it breaks my heart every time, but I really like that Peter like has a go at Uncle Ben. Then
Yeah.
He says, you stop trying to be my father, and then he obviously goes off to the wrestling, which he lied about, and then he is indirectly responsible for Uncle Ben getting shot because he lets the guy go.
Yeah.
And then he realizes that was his sort of pride about the not getting paid the $3,000 that ultimately got Uncle Ben killed, and that sort of sets up his whole Peter's whole sort of motivation and code
Yes.
of conduct for being Spider-Man. He's doing it for Uncle Ben. He's trying to make amends. And what I really like about that is it shows that he's flawed, that he's a human being. He's not like perfect, you know. It's not like, you know, I'm sorry, fans, MCU fans, but you know, Tom Holland Spider-Man, I feel like he's just perfect. He doesn't put a foot wrong. He's funny and charming. He does everything right. He never makes a mistake. Does anything wrong. A lot of superheroes are like this as well.
Or if he does, that it's very superficial.
Yeah, a lot of other
Skin deep.
superheroes are like this. That they're perfect. They're perfect, good people who never do anything wrong. Whereas Peter, he makes a mistake. He lets sort of pride and teenage stubbornness get in the way, and I love that. I feel like the whole of the rest of his story and the Spider-Man films are him trying to make amends for his error and to do Uncle Ben proud
and to not let it happen again.
Yeah, and to live up to and there's another thing in that scene that Uncle Ben says that gets forgotten about, and it's after that, I think, after he says, "With great power comes great responsibility." He says something about this is the time of your life where you decide what kind of
man
you're going to be
Yeah.
for the rest of your life, and you can either be a good man or you can be a bad man or something. I mean, I'm obviously paraphrasing,
Yeah.
but it's something like that.
Peter, these are the years when a man changes into the man he's going to become the rest of his life. Just be careful who you change into.
And that you know, looking back at that really rings true as well, because you know, I feel like that is ultimately what Peter's doing for the whole of the rest of the series. He's desperately trying to be a good person and do the right thing, which I think kind of nicely parallels Norman Osborn's sort of journey, because he, similarly to Peter, and at the same time, basically, he has sort of setbacks in his life. You know, the company is getting sacked from his own company, and he also, at the same time as Peter, has a transformation where he becomes a sort of
becomes basically a super soldier.
Like an
enhanced human
being. Enhanced human. But he goes down the wrong path.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
Which again, I like how it comes that later in the film when he says to Peter about teaming up, like, oh, we should team up. We should be, we'd be unstoppable. But you know, he's gone down the bad path, whereas Peter is well and truly gone down the good path because of Uncle Ben's words. And I just think that's so good.
There is no, I know they didn't have it because it's been told twice over, but they didn't have anything sort of similar for the MCU Spider-Man. They were just like they did just insert him into the MCU because they got the rights.
Yeah.
And Sony were like, yeah, okay. You know, it is, looking back on it, and not again. This will come up in 2 episodes time, or 3, and it is just like there's no. You know, there is no pivotal point where Spider-Man in the MCU makes that decision because of something that happens to him.
Yeah.
He just, you know, he does just say it in a bit of a throwaway line, I know, because they're not doing an origin again.
Yeah.
That, you know, he was just like, oh, you get these powers and, you know, you have to make a choice about what you're going to do with them, kind of thing. But it's explained in such a bad way in comparison.
I agree.
There is no comparison.
Well, no, because there's only one Spider-Man, mate.
That's Tobey Maguire.
And and you know, and again, a lot of these different story arcs and themes some of them get sewn up by the end, some of them don't. This one, I really like it. You know, at the end when he's fighting Norman and the Green Goblin, and Norman says to him, "Oh, I've Peter, you know, when he's pretending to be nice,
Yeah.
and he says to Peter, I've been like a father to you," which is kind of true. But then Peter retorts with, "I had a father. His name was Benjamin Parker." And it's like that's like it's like it's so satisfying. I really, things like that I find just and then at the funeral,
Great details about this particular trilogy.
Yeah, and then
that doesn't
yeah
often happen.
Yeah.
It can sometimes happen where there's a good callback.
Yeah.
Again, not to keep comparing it to the MCU, but there's not a lot else because it's such a behemoth. It can happen, and has, but rarely.
Yeah.
So, and whereas in this, there's a lot of nice and understandable callbacks.
Yeah.
In this,
yes,
it happens. In this movie, it happens in 2.
Yeah.
It can happen, I think, between Peter and Harry in 3, where it's like the emotional,
there is.
the emotional gravity, comes out in the writing.
Yeah.
And this is one of the first examples of it feels like the character has actually gone on this journey and it's actually meant something to them.
Yes.
Whereas a lot of the time in the MCU, it's like they've gone on this journey, sometimes to outer space and out of their comfort zone, and things happen to them that have never happened to any human before. And instead of getting something quite grounded, you just do get a bit of a quip and a bit of a throw it by the wayside.
I don't know if this is right, Liam. I don't know if this is a fair observation, but with the MCU, I just feel like the characters, and predominantly the main title characters, I just feel like they don't grow and change. Does that make sense?
Maybe, except for the exception maybe being Iron Man. Because in the beginning he is just like an arsehole who sells weapons to not to terrorists, but he makes weapons to kill. But then it turns out
he changes. I guess he changes.
The majority of his changes happen.
He changes his morals,
at the
but I don't. He doesn't really grow as a person. He's still the same sort of cocky, quick-witted guy. Although
the famous lines are from Captain America are, "You're not the one to make the sacrifice play," and he's just like, "Yeah, that's right." And then in the end, he does.
Yeah,
he kills himself to kill that.
Yeah.
So there are certain bits, but you are right in saying that the majority of the characters don't.
It's just when I feel like in Endgame, I feel like they're the exact same characters with the same personalities that they were in their first film.
I can see that for the majority. I can see that for, say, the entirety of Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yeah.
I like those films.
Yeah.
They don't grow as people.
Yeah.
Necessarily.
But yeah, I mean, I think, obviously, in case, obviously, if it wasn't obvious by now, Tobey Maguire's my favourite Spider-Man, and I also think that he is the best.
Yeah.
I don't just think he's the best because he's my favourite either. I think he's the best because his version of Peter Parker is, in my opinion, just head and shoulders above Andrew Garfield's and Tom Holland's. I mean, I don't know. I don't know if I'll get I don't know if I should get into it now or at the end. But my sort of summary of Tobey Maguire's Peter Parker as a whole.
Yeah, we'll do that at the end once we've done our nice little out of fives.
Well, what I'll say is that each of these films, right, these Sam Raimi trilogy films, for me personally, each of these films have like a theme, right? Have like an overall theme. and I think that it's very apparent. And I think the theme for the first film is responsibility, because obviously the characters they're becoming adults. They've graduated high school. Obviously, Peter becomes Spider-Man, learns that he has this monumentous gift that he has to use for good and to help people. But it's so much more than that as well. It's other things as well. Like, it's just the responsibility of life, and you know, his responsibility to the people he cares about, like Aunt May and Mary Jane and Harry. So I feel like the overall theme of the first film is responsibility.
And what's the next one? What is the theme of 2?
So for me, the theme of Spider-Man 2 is sacrifice.
Cool. Why is that?
Okay, well, I guess that leads us on to
It
Spider-Man
does, yeah.
2. Well, the reason I feel like the theme of Spider-Man 2 is sacrifice is because Peter in Spider-Man 2, for me, this is the film that sums up Tobey Maguire's interpretation of the character as the best for me, because Peter Parker is absolutely selfless.
We have spoke about this. There's no real like trying to get any recognition, even to touch on it briefly. Even in 3, when he does get recognition, he's just happy about it. He's not like, yeah, about damn time. He's just
Exactly.
like, I can't believe this.
That's why he says they love me.
Yeah.
But in like
he's Spider-Man.
Like he's asking a
yeah, they
question.
do. Yeah.
I can't believe it.
Yeah. And
Exactly.
in 2 it is more prevalent that he is overly selfless.
He is so selfless and kind, and but not to contradict myself, but do you know what? In this film, he's earned it.
Yeah.
He's not just, because in the first film he had flaws. He made mistakes.
Yeah.
He wasn't perfect.
No.
He was a dorky, you know, spotty loser in high school, and he was a stubborn, and he had let his pride get in the way, and he made mistakes. Like he you know, when he goes after the Uncle Ben's killer, you know, so he was angry. But as in this film, he's grown into like Uncle Ben said, he's grown into the man he's going to be for the rest of his life. And he's, I feel like in Spider-Man 2, he's finally become Spider-Man, right?
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
And he is so selfless and so heroic, but not in a stereotypical hero way. He's just, like, I hasten to use the word, but he's so goddamn nice.
Yeah, isn't it?
But not in a sickly like way. He is
just the perfect balance of just like,
he's such a good person.
Yeah.
And he just, you know, like
he's not in your face nice.
No.
He's just like, any situation that comes to him, any, you know, especially like where he lives, and like,
Exactly.
you know, being, you know,
he lives in a crummy rundown apartment that where the door doesn't even work.
yeah.
He's working multiple jobs just to make ends meet.
And until he is infected in the next movie, he doesn't do anything about it.
Doesn't. And he's, you know, but he can't do anything about it because I know that in the Honest trailer they not the Honest trailer, the
Pitch meeting.
He makes a joke about it, but he doesn't make money off of being Spider-Man. You know, he doesn't use his powers for
any financial gain. Yeah.
Any gain. He lives a humble life because he is a humble, selfless person. He does everything. Everything he does is for other people. He never does anything for himself. He, you know, like in the first film, you know, he stood by while his best friend went out with the girl that he was in love with, and who his best mate knew that he was in love with, but he said, mate, what do you think you're doing? You know I like this bird.
Yeah. Didn't do anything else.
Of course, didn't do anything else because
Still his mate.
because he cares and loves for both of them. And in this film, you know, and he was even a shoulder for Harry to cry on about MJ.
Which is ludicrous.
Without even breaking a sweat.
Yeah.
And he doesn't he doesn't tell Harry, even though he has multiple opportunities to, he doesn't tell Harry that the Green Goblin killed himself.
Yeah.
He allows Harry to blame Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Because he knows that will be easier for Harry than learning the truth that his dad was, a villain.
Yeah.
So by blaming Spider-Man, it's easier for Harry to live with his father's death. So
he's doing mind-bogglingly kind of nice
stuff
things
that you don't
for
even,
his friends and
that
family.
you don't even consider.
No.
So so for those of you who think, why doesn't he tell Harry the truth about that what happened and that it was not Spider-Man's fault? It's because he knows that Harry needs to blame Spider-Man. So he sacrifices, and then in Spider-Man 2, there's that scene at the party where Harry drunkenly confronts him and slaps him round the face.
Yeah.
Doesn't do anything.
No.
He doesn't
fight back or
doesn't
react.
do anything
because he doesn't fight back at all because he knows he could probably kill him in a punch.
Well, of course he could.
So
he stands by where MJ gets engaged to another guy who seems like Mr. Perfect.
Yeah.
And even though MJ said at the end of the last film she wants to be with him, he says we can't be together.
Sacrifices that because he knows that she'll just get hurt.
Yeah.
I mean, that doesn't really change much of what happens. I know in retrospect you can look back, but at the end of the first film when he's like, no, I can't do it because you'll get in harm's way.
Yeah.
She's literally in harm's way in every movie.
Yeah.
Because of her association.
I know.
So I know the thought is there, but they don't then think, actually what we'll do is we'll not have MJ as the damsel in distress every movie and just do that.
No, unfortunately they don't, and that's
one negative about this trilogy for me.
Yeah,
it is just kind of at the end it's like MJ's in trouble.
Yeah.
And then something else tacked on.
Yeah, no, I completely agree, and that is unfortunate. Obviously, I think if they'd made these films nowadays, obviously they would make the effort to
put in a skybeam,
develop her character, and make her less of a damsel in distress, and more sort of strong and independent stuff.
Yeah.
Although I do think sometimes that goes too far to the point of these characters don't. They're not realistic.
They got plot armor so thick that they're not going to die.
But having said that, I don't think that MJ's character, apart from the whole getting kidnapped all the time and having to need to be rescued by Spider-Man, they do develop her character.
Oh yeah,
with her career as an actress and her sort of relationships and stuff.
She gets a lot more development and screen time about her life and what's going on than a lot of love interests and even like actual superhero characters that are female.
Yeah, like Black Widow.
Yeah.
Or Lois Lane or other.
Yeah. Especially Lois Lane from the Man of Steel.
Yeah.
It's like we get that she's a tough investigative journalist. She doesn't get any better, worse, or really have anything to do.
But there are two. I just want to. There are two examples of Peter Parker's sort of flawless, selfless heroism in this film, and they're not, again, nothing to do with Spider-Man. And one is, and honestly, again, it's another scene that breaks my heart, and it's when he confesses to Aunt May about what really happened on the night that Uncle Ben died. And I hadn't actually noticed this before, but when we watched it the other day, I noticed that I don't if you remember the scene, she is talking about they're talking about it, and she says, "Oh, it's my fault. If I was the one who wanted him to take you to the library that day. If I hadn't have done that, this never would have happened." And then it just cuts to Peter, and you just see his face, and he's like. And then he proceeds to tell Aunt May the truth.
Yeah.
And you know, her reaction is heartbreaking. She hasn't said anything. He puts his hand on her hand and she takes it away. And then she just silently goes up the stairs.
Yep.
And he's just left there alone. And, you know, she doesn't know he's Spider-Man, obviously.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
So for all he knows, she thinks that he's like a complete and utter dick.
Yeah. That he just went to this.
He's done this just to get a car.
Yeah,
to
yeah.
impress Mary Jane. But he does this because he doesn't want Aunt May to blame herself. So he's potentially sacrificing his relationship with Aunt May for
His
the
only
sake
family he's got left.
of her, you know, not being able to move on and not blaming herself for Uncle Ben's death. So that for me is just like, the merit of his character is just so outstanding.
Yeah.
And another example is during the brief period in the film where he loses his powers, and even then, when he's lost his powers, and he's decided to not be Spider-Man anymore. He's hung up his costume, whatever, which I like because he's a fucking human being.
Yeah.
And a real person. If me and you suddenly tomorrow morning woke up with superpowers, we're still going to be the same people.
Yes, yeah.
And I would get annoyed if I was missing out on things, going out with my
of course.
mates and stuff, because I'm always, you know, out in the streets of Wellingar City saving damsels in distress.
Of which there are none.
Yeah, from the youths who hang around outside McDonald's.
Yeah.
Anyway, but even then, there's in a nice sort of I don't know if it's deliberate, but in a nice sort of callback to the first film, I think there's a burning building with a baby trapped in there. And
still goes in.
He just straight away runs in. But bear in mind, he doesn't have his spider powers.
No.
He's just Peter Parker, and he says, goes to what's going on. So, our baby's in there, and he just runs in straight away, and he runs in and he goes in and he saves the baby without any hesitation, knowing that he doesn't have his powers.
And it's a complete struggle because he doesn't.
And it's a massive struggle.
Yeah.
But he does it. He just does it. And I just think that just shows such a great testament to
the only
him.
thing that does get me about, and this is a very minute detail in terms of the grand scheme of things, you say he runs into a burning building and gets the baby. That obviously that's so selfless, but in a scene just before that, when we have raindrops keep falling on my head, like the montage of him not being Spider-Man,
Yeah.
there is a shot where he's like walking past someone getting mugged, and he literally just like turns around. He literally turns his back to the crime, and he doesn't do anything about it. You know the shot. It's like a mid shot of like the alleyway, and he's walking past, and there's two people beating up someone.
Yes.
And he turns around, and
Yes.
he's just like, it is just like an awkward shot.
You're right. But what I think about that is I think that, and I know that it's you can never be certain, but I'm guessing that he looked at that and thought, all right, that guy's getting mugged, but it's not necessarily life threatening. People get mugged every day.
That's true.
Like the scene where he sees the police cars driving past and he just looks and shoves a hot dog in his mouth. The police are on it.
Yeah.
Whereas with the baby in the building,
Life or death.
the firemen are all there. They're not going in because it's too dangerous. So I feel like with that, he's just like, I've got no choice.
Yeah.
It's just instinct. Like that. There's this is life or death. That baby's going to die.
Yeah. Also, that montage of, again, raindrops keep falling on my head.
Yeah.
So I was talking about it with Sam because Sam was rewatching.
Yeah.
And he said it was as cringy as the dancing.
Do you know what? I was watching it. I was thinking, we were warned.
Yeah, I know.
We should have seen it.
You know, like where you're just like, when someone, someone you've known about or someone you've seen is just like, oh, it turns out they're a bit of a wrong 'un. It's like, yeah, all the signs were there. this was kind of a bit of like that. It was
Well,
just
well,
like,
listen.
this is a bit weird, but I don't think it's as egregious as I've said that too many times.
Well,
but
I've actually
I don't
got,
think it's as bad as
I've actually got a theory about the that infamous moment in 3.
we'll get to that.
But no, I know what you mean.
It is a bit schlocky, a bit cheesy.
It is, but
but
think,
not overly so.
I think that was done on purpose to demonstrate how Peter was feeling.
Oh yes.
You know, because
He's like, oh, I'm in a bit of a rut, you know.
and then he quits being Spider-Man, and he feels like the sun has come out on his life. He starts going to classes. He goes to Mary Jane's play when he missed it before because he was, you know, fighting crime and that.
Didn't cry quite as much as he did when
she played Cinderella.
When she played Cinderella,
he cried like a baby when you played Cinderella. On that, I know a lot of people take the piss out of Tobey for being sort of geeky and wimpy and wussy, but
that's supposed to be Peter Parker.
That makes him so, that what makes him more perfect to Spider-Man, because he, you know, he is a wimpy, he is a sort of geeky dorky guy, but you know, it makes the whole double identity thing that much more unbelievable. And again, I hate to compare it in the negative because I'm more of a Batman fan than a Spider-Man fan, but it is pretty. I mean, when you think about it, it's pretty obvious that Bruce Wayne is Batman.
Yeah.
You know, I thought Andrew Garfield's Peter Parker was too cool and slick and hey and look at me and, you know.
100%.
And Tom Holland's Spider-Man for me is too. He's just jokes. It's all jokes all the time and one-liners, and doesn't take anything seriously because there's an opportunity for a pun here. And you know, oh, hold on a minute, hold on, dude. Let me just get this. I need to get this for the gram. Let me just film you getting mugged for the gram, and then I'll save you. And all it's all this. Ah, ha ha ha! Another pun. Fucking hell. Whereas, yeah, there's comedy in these films. Don't get me wrong, but it comes from other sources. It comes from Bruce Campbell and
he's great. His cameos are great.
Oh god, I've forgotten his name, and I feel really bad for that.
Is it J.K. Simmons?
J.K. Simmons, yes.
Yeah.
Thanks. Sorry, J.K. Sorry, mate.
He's fantastic. You know, I mean, we haven't touched upon any really of the other side characters, but he is the most standout of such. That isn't just like directly a villain. Yeah, for that movie, he's one of the constant kind of
that whole office. I think is great.
Honestly, yeah. Oh, yeah.
You've got Ted Raimi as the sort of bumbling sidekick.
Is that his brother?
It's Sam Raimi's brother. Yeah.
Oh wow, he's great.
And you've got obviously Elizabeth Banks as the sort of sassy secretary.
As Betty Brant.
Yeah,
she's another famous character in the comics.
Then you've got the other guy, the African American actor. I don't know what the character's name is. You know, I've always wondered this with him. I don't know if this is a comic book thing, but there's some sort of weird thing with him and Peter.
He knows he's Spider-Man.
Does he?
Yeah.
I think he does as well because I remember there's a bit in 2 when they find the outfit and he says and he and they're like, oh, Spider-Man must have quit, and he just looks at Peter and he's like, he looks really disappointed, doesn't he? I feel like he knows he's Spider-Man, but that's never ever touched upon. But I've always felt that there's something between him and Peter, some sort of secret.
Yeah, I feel like he just knows. He knows.
Does. I think he knows. Yeah, but they never really go into why or how. No. But there you go.
It's the character's name is Robbie Robertson, which is very much
that's such a
very Stan Lee Marvel kind of first name, second name.
Yeah, I feel like Robbie Robertson definitely knows that Peter Parker is. Yeah, sorry listeners for going off on one there. About Peter Parker, but I just feel that this film, out of the 3, Spider-Man 2, really showcases his character, and it really cements why Tobey Maguire is my favourite Spider-Man.
So this Spider-Man trilogy has some iconic villains, and Alfred Molina as Doctor Octopus, Otto Octavius. His rendition is just like, here's the thing, I wouldn't say like, oh, it's straight out of the comic books. I'd say more like it's its own thing, but it's just spot on as a follow-up villain post Norman, post Willem Dafoe. I'd say that they're quite close. They're like on equal footing as like very iconic villains. A, in the Spider-Man universe, comic book wise, and B, in this trilogy. He's just, very initially, and I'd say quite a way through this film, is kind of a sympathetic villain.
Yeah.
Which I know some people might be like, so I know Joe isn't really a fan of sympathetic villains. He's more just like, I want the villain to be a villain.
Yeah.
Whereas to ground it in this universe, I feel like they did a great job of being like, well, his initial drive is to create a renewable energy source, which is like, a very noble thing, to put your mind to as a scientist. But it just, I know this is cliche, but and then things go wrong.
Yeah.
And I feel like this film does the sympathetic well, and it also does the evil villain well.
I half agree with you,
Right.
and half disagree. I like the sympathetic villain angle, because I feel like when you make a villain sympathetic, you make them more human and more realistic.
Yeah, and it makes the situation more complex.
Because, exactly, every great villain in every film, in every story, book, film, medium, every good, great villain doesn't necessarily think that they are the villain.
Yes, yeah. I thought you were going to say that every good villain is a sympathetic one.
No,
I was like,
no.
well, I don't know if you've seen Schindler's List.
No. I don't think that at all. But what I do think is that great villains don't necessarily think that they're the villain.
Yeah.
Or even if they're aware that what they're doing is wrong,
they're doing it for the greater good.
Shut it!
Yeah, they're doing it for a purpose, for a reason. So it's either they know that they're evil, but they think what they're doing is good, or they think that they're good, but their actions are evil.
Yeah.
Otherwise they're just, Sauron. They're just an eye in a tower.
Just Sauron, yeah.
Or they're, what was it? That fucking cloud thing in Fantastic Four, Rise of the Silver Surfer. What's that thing called? Galactus, whatever. Yeah.
That's Galactus is a famous villain that is shaped like a human.
Or the thing in Fifth Element. It's literally just called evil.
Yeah, it is actually.
It's just you know what I mean. So I think I like sympathetic villains. And I think that works really well in this film. Doc Ock is a great. I like that he sort of becomes a mentor to Peter. Again, another father figure, which is like a theme in these films, and and I like that he does the experiment. It goes wrong, and it results in the accidental death of his wife. The connection to Harry and all that. I like that. Where I don't agree with you is I don't really the evil side of Doc Ock seems a bit.
Is it forced?
Forced, yeah. It just I get that I get that the robotic arm things play a part in that because his chip gets destroyed.
Yeah.
But
I didn't realise until this actual this watch through that they have a sophisticated AI in them.
Yeah.
That I don't think that's really explored as much.
But they're not. But
As
when
it should.
But they're. But But when he sort of introduces them, he just introduces them as they're just literally their only function is to help him build the machine. Not to be like an artificial intelligence. And also he switches a bit like Norman. He Gollums. He switches between sort of being Otto and being Doc Ock, where he's like no, we can't do that. It's wrong. But then again, the wrong thing would be to not finish the work that we started. So if he's switching between between personalities, when he's like, the good Otto, wouldn't he be like, oh my god, what are we doing? I need to get out of here. I need to turn myself in to the police or whatever. But it just seems. And then when he's like evil Doc Ock, he's very evil. Like he
Steals Aunt May.
Yeah, like
just like climbs up,
and he drops her.
Yeah.
And he like threatens to threatens to kill people, kill MJ.
He
Kill
throws
Aunt
a
May.
taxi at Peter Parker, even though he doesn't know that he's got superpowers.
He doesn't care, and
so very lucky that he is Spider-Man. Otherwise, and he only really wants to talk to Peter because at that point he wants to get Spider-Man.
And
probably not the best way to negotiate.
I feel like it would have worked better if after the accident he was just pure evil. So the arms just controlled his mind entirely.
Yeah.
And he wasn't even Otto anymore. He was just like a
drone.
A drone, yeah. Like a host for a parasite.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
And he was just like, he had no memories of his former self. And then at the end, Peter would be like, could maybe show him a picture of his wife or something. And be like, your name's Otto Octavius, you're a good man. And I know this is controversial, but I must admit, rewatching 2, this was the only one of the 3 where my opinion differed slightly.
Wow. Okay.
I didn't think 2 was as good as I thought it was when I first saw it.
I'm gonna say that the train sequence, the fight after the bank, and then they fall on a train.
The train is the second fight they have.
Oh yeah, they meet up, don't they?
Yeah.
That fight sequence is the best fight sequence in the trilogy.
I completely agree.
The CGI is good, except for
good.
it's good.
Is it better than 1? I don't think it is. Do you?
Yeah, and the only time that the CGI actually gets bad in that scene, like terrible, is when he is at the front of the train. And he's like holding it right at the end. You
see it's a cartoon.
Yeah. Looks like it's like PlayStation 2
But some of
graphics.
the shots of Doc Ock like walking up buildings and stuff.
Oh,
looks very cartoony.
Oh, in the whole film overall,
yeah,
some of the CGI is bad.
Yeah.
It is on par in terms of like it's a roller coaster up and down inconsistency. It's the same as 1, where there'll be shots and you'll be like, God, is that CGI? Fuck me, that's good.
Yes.
And then there's other bits where you're just like, holy shit, that looks like PlayStation 2. But in this particular fight, I'm saying like in this particular fight, the graphics, like the CGI is used in bits that make sense, and the majority of the shots in that fight, it just doesn't take you out of it at all. You just think it's real.
I agree.
Except for that very final shot where he's got his mask off, he's at the front of the train, holding the webs together. Honestly, please watch it in like not fucking standard definition. It looks so bad.
Yeah, it does. It does.
It's like the rest of the CGI budget was used for this fight, and obviously the very end, like the first one where they do the "I Love America" shot.
I mean, I agree.
So in this, if you were to look at this fight, I mean, you could just watch it on YouTube. I think it stands out and holds up as like one of the best comic book fight scenes of all time.
I agree.
So that's why I'm like, oh my god, like you're right. Like they do the thing where I call it the budget cut, which is basically like if Doc Ock needs to leave a scene, he climbs around the side of a building.
Yeah.
To just get him off screen as soon as possible, so they can just stop using money towards the CGI budget.
Yeah.
That happens quite a bit, and sometimes some shots like I feel like the arms are always good,
Yes.
but when they have to replace Alfred Molina with a completely CGI Doc Ock,
Yeah.
that's when it's at its worst in this
Look,
film.
I'm not criticizing it. I mean, it
For
was,
the time, it was great.
It was of its time.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, I don't think it's any better than one.
No,
I don't think it's improved.
No.
I think 3 greatly improved on CGI, special effects.
We'll get to that in a very short amount of time.
Honestly, there isn't a single shot in 3 where I'm like, oh, that's computer animated.
Is that really?
Honestly.
No, mate.
Yeah.
There are so many at the end where Harry on the glider.
Not
because
obviously though. Not obviously. Not in the same way as like the bird's eye shot of Peter jumping over the buildings and the shot of Doc Ock crawling round. They're obvious. You watch that. Oh my god, that's so obviously a cartoon. Whereas in 3, I don't look at it and I think that's obviously a cartoon.
there are some egregious shots in that. There are some so bad shots.
Well, anyway.
It's mainly to do with Harry Osborn.
Right.
Like when it's Spider-Man and when it's Spider-Man and Sandman, surprisingly,
Yeah,
the effects for Sandman I think are like groundbreaking.
they're good.
Yeah.
Well, it was 2007 by then.
Yeah.
And I feel like they're much improved.
But there are some shots in the scenes where they're having the chase where it turns Harry completely CGI, and because he's not in his suit,
because he's not wearing a mask.
because they're having to recreate
He's not a stuntman.
because they're having
Yeah.
to recreate the person. That's when the CGI looks dodgy.
But circling back to 2, that fight, which was just like a mid-film fight, is better than most final fights.
Yes, 100%.
But I have to say, the train sequence, I know that gets a lot of mockery for the face that Tobey Maguire pulls.
Oh yes, yeah.
When he's stopping that train. But I've got to say, I really love that scene.
Yeah, me too.
And I really feel like, again, this is what I was saying about sacrifice. That scene, it almost like that is the scene that for Peter sort of justifies all the sacrifices he's made. He realizes in that moment that it is what all the sacrifices he's made, all the hardship he's suffered, and he does suffer.
Oh yeah.
And this is another thing I want to say about Tobey Maguire Spider-Man, more so than Andrew Garfield and Tom Holland, is he suffers so much, and he's all on his own. I know that Andrew Garfield's the Spider-Man, Amazing Spider-Man films are not set in a universe, so he doesn't have the help like from Iron Man and stuff. But he's completely by himself, Tobey Maguire. He has no help. He doesn't have fucking Iron Man or a built-in like CPU to guide him, and or like a super suit that can basically go up in space. He's by himself.
Yeah.
He's just a guy by himself. No one around him. No one knows he's Spider-Man. He can't turn to anyone for help or advice. He doesn't have an Alfred.
No. Doesn't have a guy in the chair like MCU.
Yeah.
Tom Holland
Doesn't
has
have a
as
guy
well.
in a
Doesn't
chair.
have Ned. Yeah.
He doesn't have anything. He's anyway, that scene, he stops the train, and I know he pulls a like silly sort of face that looks like he's
Constipated a bit.
having an orgasm.
I just feel like you would. Here's the thing with Tobey Maguire. I was going to say this about the first one. Tobey Maguire makes hardship and effort and loss and everything. He makes it look so ugly.
Exactly.
And that's because it is ugly.
Exactly.
When he cries over Uncle Ben,
Yes.
he doesn't have he looks fucking grim.
Exactly,
You know?
I
and that's
agree.
what you would look like if someone was you're holding your loved one.
You wouldn't do like a single movie tear down the cheek. You would ugly cry.
Ugly cries.
I would ugly cry
Yeah.
if my father figure was died right in front of my face.
And honestly, in this shot, if you're like holding,
Yeah, he must be in excruciating pain.
he must be in tremendous pain.
I know
lots of things.
You're gonna pull a face. Like, you're gonna look like a fucking idiot, aren't you?
Lots of lots of jokes about like where does this webbing come from?
Yeah.
But like he's just like shooting these webs out of his hands and holding them.
Yes.
And using his body to hold back a train that's probably going like what,
100 miles an hour.
Yeah, like 80, 100 miles an hour. And he's trying to stop a lot of people from dying in a short space of time.
Exactly.
It would look ugly.
Exactly.
This is the thing. Like, not to get too into like all Hollywood movies, but like when drama happens to people and like trauma happens, they don't look good doing it. They don't look good experiencing those things.
Exactly.
And for how skin deep, how skin deep comic book movies should be, in terms of like cinema, in terms of like drama, like to have like traumatic experiences be not hugely realistic, but like closer to real life than Hollywood would portray them.
Yeah.
Is a good thing.
Yeah.
You know, and I know we're getting like really into like talking about, Tobey Maguire's cum face when he's trying to save these people, but I'm like things like that. You would just look ugly doing it. And Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man is great at just looking ugly.
Yeah. When
in distress, when he's had trauma, when he's had emotional trauma. So it feels
because he's a real guy with real fucking emotions and feelings.
Yeah.
And sometimes as much as he does go to great lengths to hide that from those around him to protect them, it does come out. But I really like that. I really like after that, he stops the train, and he sort of goes to fall. And they all reach out and stop him, and he's lost his mask at this point. I think Doc Ock's ripped it off, and they carry him.
He takes it off because it's like burning
his face. Yeah. And they carry him back through the carriage, and they sit him down, and they're all just sort of looking. All the people looking around him, and I think one guy goes, "Oh my god, he's just a kid. Same age as my son."
Yeah.
And they're all like, and then he wakes up, and he realizes he doesn't have his mask on. And they're all just staring at him, and then one kid comes and brings his mask, gives it to him, and says, "Here he goes. We won't tell anyone who you are."
Yeah.
And there's this shot of him, and he's just sort of looking round the carriage, looking at them, and he sort of does a little smile, not a big one, but just a tiny little smile. He doesn't say a word, but I feel like that for me is so poignant because that's him finally getting
a bit of recognition. Yeah.
But again, because he's so selfless and humble, he doesn't say anything. He just puts his mask back on, and he gets up, and he just sort of he says thank you, I'll take it from here. But I feel like in that moment when they're all staring at him and they just give him his mask back and that, and he realizes that they've saved him, he's finally got the recognition that he goddamn deserves.
Yeah.
And it's just I compare that to like some of the in the later Spider-Man films. I think it happens in the Andrew Garfield ones where he's like waving to crowds and posing for pictures and stuff, and sort of lapping up all the fame.
Oh, 100%.
And it's just like
he's lapping it up.
Whereas,
even more so than I don't think Tom Holland's Spider-Man goes as far as to be like. I know you said about like posing for Instagram and stuff. I feel like he does a lot of.
Yeah, you're right. He doesn't.
He does a lot of like the like vloggy kind of self-tape kind of stuff.
No, he's not.
But he's never posing.
He's not fame hungry.
No.
Whereas I feel like Andrew Garfield's Peter Parker is
loving it.
well on the fame.
Is loving
the attention.
Yeah, I feel like it would be more. It would be more in character for Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man to do what Peter Parker does in Spider-Man 3,
Yeah.
where he kisses Gwen Stacy,
Yeah.
who, obviously in this, he's with MJ at that point in the third movie, where he, essentially does quote unquote cheat on her. I feel like it'd be more on Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man to be like, actually, I'd do it for the gram, I'd do it for the cameras, do it for the attention, whereas it is a little bit out of left field for Peter Parker in the third one.
Yeah, and but I feel I do. The end. I like the ending of 2 because it feels. I know it's a bit cheesy with MJ like running out of her wedding in slow motion.
Honestly,
with doves flying through the air.
It is cheesy, but honestly, in this time period of comic book movies, it didn't feel as cheesy as it does now.
And do you know why it doesn't? Because they've earned it. Both of the characters have earned this happy ending.
Yes.
This sort of rom-com ending.
Yeah.
They deserve it. Because the whole fucking film, as I said, Peter has been making all these sacrifices, including his relationship with MJ.
And being not okay, but being more acceptant that she's with someone else.
Yeah.
That she's with this guy who, again, is like... I feel like in casting, they were just like, oh, it's going to play J. Jonah Jameson's son, but he basically has to be like hunk number 42. Do you know what I mean? Like, yeah. So, there's a guy who's taller, more good looking. Yeah. He's a fucking astronaut, so he's got a better job.
Exactly.
And he's just like, do you know what? If she's happy, I'm sad about it. I'm sad about it, but
because he's completely selfless.
Yeah.
I'd be like, I fucking hate this guy.
Yeah. Well, like,
yeah. I like it. I like
I like the sacrifice from Doc Ock as well.
Yeah, I like that too.
The redemption is
I like that too. It would have been better if he'd been like if he'd been pure evil for the whole film and then it changes back. Yeah. But I do like that.
Yeah.
It's a good character arc because where Peter says to him, you said to me that intelligence is a gift. It's not a privilege or whatever.
Yep. Lovely. Again, another good. It's not obviously not as recognizable.
It's a philosophy.
It's another philosophy.
Film.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's one that Peter had to learn because he obviously knows about great power comes great responsibility, but he's also a smart guy, so he has to learn that his intelligence that he is basically earned. And again, he's not a he's a smart guy, but you can tell throughout these movies that it's not something that he's just like. So comparable to the Andrew Garfield one, where it's like Peter is a smart guy. His doesn't feel earned. You just jump in and he's like, like with his web shooters in Amazing Spider-Man, that technology looks so fucking complex. Like, I don't even think that like Peter Parker from this Spider-Man, Tobey Maguire, would be able to, his intelligence is grounded in the world we know, whereas with Andrew Garfield's, it's kind of like, oh yeah, he's in high school and he's just Peter Parker in this universe has to go through hardship to even just, he's not even like technically, he's not called a genius in this. He's just very smart.
Yeah, he's not a genius.
Whereas
he's just
in the next two iterations,
yeah,
he is, he's made technology. He is genuinely, like, it seems like a given genius.
I know this is controversial, and obviously comic book fans will disagree, but I actually really like that that he produces the web himself.
I'm the opposite.
I know you don't agree, but
Here's the thing. This is again. I'll probably touch on this in another podcast in a bit more detail. But
Yeah.
like, I'm not going to be like, oh, it's so comic accurate. I don't really. I'm like you. I have read comic books, but it's a different medium. So I'm like, just make it make sense for cinema. I
Yeah.
don't really mind
Yeah.
if it's too far from the comic book. Sam will crucify otherwise. But
of course he will.
I like the fact that it's in the Amazing Spider-Man. Yes, his genius, quote unquote, is given and not earned, really. But I like the fact that he does a bit more like trial and error of his technology to help him be Spider-Man. With Tobey Maguire, he does go through iterations of being Spider-Man. Obviously, he makes his own stuff. So initially, it's like a hoodie. I know that happens in basically all of the Spider-Man, but there is more in Amazing Spider-Man where he's like tinkering basically, and I like the fact that he, I'm okay with the more comic book accurate, like the web doesn't come out of him. I'm more just like, okay, if you could climb and then you were like, oh, I know of this material. If it takes him like a montage of like a couple of weeks, couple of months, and he's just like trying his best to work out what to do with it, I'm like, that's good. I feel like that one thing that did well, not like brilliant, amazing, but like it did well, was to make him like create his own stuff, and it take him a bit of time to work out what to do in terms of the swinging and stuff. It is a bit weird that it comes out of him. I know a lot of people. It's obviously a bit Marmite. I think this subject.
It is Marmite. I love it. I think I just, for me, it just feels it's organic.
It does feel natural, but it
he
is
gets
a bit
bitten by
weird.
the spider. He gets super strength. He can stick to walls, and he produces silk, which spiders do.
Yeah.
So it seems natural.
It
to
does.
me.
It does. I do get it.
But obviously, I know that it's not in keeping with the comic books. But like you said, Tobey Maguire's version of Peter Parker doesn't come across as a genius.
Yeah, he's not an overtly genius. He's just top
very
of his
intelligent.
class.
He's
top of your class.
He's a grade A student.
Top of the class in my secondary school. They weren't like geniuses.
Yeah, they
were very smart people.
Yeah,
that.
But they couldn't produce fucking devices that can shoot webbing to make you swing from building to building.
And I'm pretty sure it's the same with high schools these days. You might have people who are going to high schools who are geniuses. There's like that's fine, but like it'll be one person in terms of But like Peter Parker being able to, I'm going to go exactly backwards on what I've just said, but him being such a technological genius in Amazing Spider-Man and MCU is like, right, okay, so it's just a bit like too much. Whereas it's a perfect balance in the Raimi trilogy.
Yeah,
for me,
it just doesn't seem like if he can do that. It's like, well, if the web doesn't come out of him organically, it comes out of like shooters that he makes. Then it's like, well, he could have done that anyway without having been Spider-Man.
Yeah,
like he wouldn't have the super strength.
He would have broke his neck
and
doing
the spider
it,
sense, but the web swinging is like one of the key features of being Spider-Man. And if he can do that anyway, then it's like, well, okay, why did he need to be bitten by the radioactive spider in the first place? So I feel like, for me personally, that was, I know, a very controversial, but I think a very good creative decision.
I think it makes sense in this universe.
Yeah.
Again, it's either or. I like both, but I just think that the Amazing Spider-Man just do it just that little bit more justice. It's a good mix of trial and error and as being close to like the character, the comic book, and that doesn't mean that I don't like it from this trilogy.
Yeah.
What is the theme of the third Spider-Man movie?
Well, so for me, the theme for Spider-Man 3 is forgiveness.
Lovely.
So I feel like this is a sort of the underlying theme of this film, and this happens with, again, a lot of the characters. You know, this is a very divisive film.
You don't say.
I think there are things about this film that I like, and there are things about this film that I think are laughable. But I mean, yeah, it's it's not as good as the first two films. I think that's a given. I mean, I've heard this trilogy referred to as the Godfather of Spider-Man films, the Godfather trilogy of Spider-Man films, in that the first two films are excellent and the third film is poor. So, and I think that's quite an accurate description.
It is quite an accurate description. Probably the closest you're going to get to a Godfather Spider-Man comparison.
Yeah.
But I can see it, and look, I feel like this film gets an overly bad rap for
Agreed.
a few quite key talking points that basically tip it over the edge that it could have been a lot better, and some stuff that just kind of brings it down. But honestly, we watched it again recently, and I enjoyed it.
I enjoyed it too.
I enjoyed it a lot.
Yeah.
And I didn't think I would. Because obviously I feel like maybe because I haven't seen it for so long that I just let those connotations kind of creep in.
Yeah.
And then I just have that and I just accept it. You know, where I'm just like, yeah, Spider-Man 3, terrible, rubbish. Dig on this. You know, emo haircuts of 2006.
I think it's not as bad as you remember it.
Yeah,
I think is the
honestly,
thing.
and I'm not quite sure whether it's not as bad as you remember, because films these days can be awful.
Oh, exactly.
Or I just let internet opinion take over. Do you know what I mean? Like, I just let the good bits fall by the wayside.
Yeah.
And the bad bits get exacerbated too much.
I mean, Christ, it's not as bad as Batman and Robin. It's not as bad as Superman 4: The Quest for Peace.
But honestly, by looking at its Rotten Tomatoes and Metacritic, you'd get the opinion that it was closer to that than to the other two.
Yeah.
Closer to Batman and Robin than
Iron Man 3, Thor: The Dark World. They get a lot of stick.
Here's the thing. I don't mind Iron Man 3.
Yeah,
that's another controversial opinion that we'll come back to.
These are all superhero sequels.
Get a bad rap.
That are considered terrible. That I think Spider-Man 3 is probably
a lot better than. Yeah. Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like that there is some issues with it, and I'll say my piece.
Yeah, go on.
Is that it is, I believe, maybe too long. And I'm not saying that like I don't like long movies. It's well established that we are like huge fans of the extended Lord of the Rings editions.
Yes.
And because that is so jam packed with good acting, CGI where it's appropriate, and just great storytelling and characters, that I could watch a cut if it was each film was about 5 hours.
Oh yes. I wish there was a 5-hour cut of.
So it's not that I don't like long movies. It's that this was overly long, and for a couple of reasons.
Yes.
You know, the inclusion and the the storyline behind Sandman is unnecessary. Something that I think we've already discussed, where I said it should be more like the beginning of, surprisingly, it should be more like the beginning of Amazing Spider-Man 2, where a villain is just in existence and he just has to fight a villain. We learn a little bit more about the villain and he's gone by maybe like halfway through the movie. Or just, beginning and end, book ending, or something like that, where the Sandman is retroactively retconned into the story to be personal to Peter.
Yes.
Which is not a good note about this movie. The fact that Sandman is the actual killer of Uncle Ben, honestly, is just kind of, when you watch it, it's jarring, because you're just like, you've had 2 films, like you said about the second one, he had that emotional scene with Aunt May where he's like, I am responsible.
Yeah.
And Peter at that time, I think they do a flashback to the guy who killed Uncle Ben, who we think killed Uncle Ben up until that point. You had 2 films where the emotion was put on that is what happened. For the third film, for them to be like, no, that's all you missed this bit. It is again, that is one of the early instances for me of retroactive retconning.
Yes.
Which I'm championing to be called James Cromwelling because of
Fallen Kingdom.
Because of Fallen Kingdom.
Yeah.
But we'll keep it as that for now. But that was one of the first times that I noticed that, where they're just like, a sequel happens, it was them all along.
Yeah.
Rubbish.
They were there in the background the whole time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's a terrible point. Venom being in it for like 5 minutes towards the end, on Eddie Brock, but in like he's in all of the marketing, like as the main villain.
Yeah.
So a bit of a waste of Venom. I say a lot of a waste of Venom. Topher Grace as Eddie Brock is a bit not great. I don't think it's the worst thing. I think it's just middle of the road. I just didn't like it. And just some infamous scenes are not as bad as you think, but they are not good. So, and I mean, you might be telling me different in a couple of seconds, but I don't think they really got too much. They didn't get incrementally too much better for me. But they're not as bad as the internet would have you believe.
Well, I agree with you that those 3 particular elements of the film are obviously the standout criticisms that one would have. Although I have to say, for me, the worst thing is the Sandman Uncle Ben death retroactive retcon. That annoys me more than Venom's little screen time, or Bully Maguire, I believe he's known on the internet.
Bully Maguire, such a great catchphrase that's only really kind of cotton on recently.
Yeah.
In terms of memes.
But so in other words, we're talking about grunge gothic Peter Parker, who goes to
disco
the jazz
dancing.
Club. No, but listen, that really bothers me. I think Thomas Hayden Church, great actor.
Yeah.
Great in Sideways.
And I wouldn't have minded them. I don't mind them including Sandman.
No.
Because they have him in here, and
yeah.
Again, the CGI is great for the character.
Yeah, but
also it's just the execution is just not.
Do you know what? But it just felt like he shoehorned in with hardly any character development. Oh, he has a sick daughter, escaped from prison. We don't really know much else other than that. Falls into a sand pit and just becomes the Sandman somehow. And then rest of the film he just wants to get money, I guess, rob banks or something
to pay for her treatment.
I just think I just think his character was underdeveloped, and I think I read somewhere that Sam Raimi wanted to just have the Sandman as the one and only villain. Personally, I wouldn't have chosen Sandman at all.
Not at all. No.
I would have had either Venom or Harry. But I guess,
I mean, to be fair, you could have had both Venom and Harry, because you could
with
still
no
have
Sandman.
you could still have had Harry's redemption.
Yeah.
Against Venom.
Yeah, exactly.
Which would have made sense.
But but it's just I don't like the Sandman really as in this film as a villain. He just seems rushed and pointless. I hate that they made him the killer of Uncle Ben. I really hate that. That for me is the worst thing about this film. Like you said, it completely ruins that whole thing I was talking about earlier about Peter, about how the responsibility and how he wants to do Uncle Ben proud and all that. And I mean, I get it's still kind of, he is still kind of responsible, because it was they're saying now in this one that it was Sandman's partner who was the robber that Peter let escape. Whatever. I really hate that. I'll tell you what though, you know what? I think Thomas Hayden Church would have been a better Eddie Brock.
Oh, 100%.
Right?
Yeah. Because Eddie Brock is supposed to be buff as
muscly
shit.
and gruff and rough around the edges.
Yeah.
He should have been Eddie Brock. He should have been Venom.
Yeah.
Anyway, I really don't like Sandman. The Venom thing as well. I mean, honestly, I think what would have fixed the whole this whole thing about there being too many villains in this film is get rid of Sandman. Cut him out altogether. This is my personal opinion. Sorry, Thomas, but cut him out. And then you either focus the film entirely on Harry, and he's the main villain of the film, and he's the new Goblin.
Yeah.
And then at the end of the film, like in like a post credit scene or the last scene of the film, you have the meteorite crash, and the symbiote comes out and like jumps out of the screen.
Nice.
And it ends. It's like, and it teases Venom for 4. Or other way round, you have Venom be the main villain of the film. Don't see much of Harry at all. He's not in it much. And then at the end of the film, he goes into the machine, comes out as the new, and it's like ha, cuts to black.
Yeah.
So either you use either one, and then you tease the other one at the end.
Yeah.
That for me would have solved the problem of the villains issue.
I think I know it's cliche to keep saying it or to even say it, but there is just too many villains, too much going on to cram in at this point. And also for me saying that they crammed in too many villains, and to say it went on too long almost feels like contradictory, because you do need time.
Yeah.
But they didn't. I don't want to see too much more. I don't want like a 3-4 hour cut of it. But it's all muddled. It's all like kind of nonsensical. It's just too much going on for it to be a coherent and kind of not deep, but emotional on the same level as the first two. There isn't too many points in 3 where it is the same kind of deep development of the characters. It's more like, and then onto this bit, and then onto this bit. This is kind of the opposite of 1, where 1 was so lean and so much a coherent story.
Yeah.
That 3 is the complete opposite, where it's so much guff. It's just like, it's unreal. doesn't mean there aren't good points in it. Being that I feel like the black Spider-Man suit is quality.
Yeah, I
love
like
it.
that. I really like that.
I like the change that it has on Peter.
Yeah,
Just not quite the emo haircut
on
and
his
guy liner.
personality.
Yeah, I like the personality
Yeah,
change.
yeah,
I'm not like too much of a fan of
Yeah.
the skin deep change. We already said that it would actually have more gravitas if
Yeah.
he looked the same,
but he was just
but his
a dick.
attitude changed.
Yeah, if he does. If he didn't have eyeliner and an emo hairstyle,
But he looks just like normal Peter Parker.
He just becomes an asshole.
Mm.
And everyone's like, Peter, why are you acting like this? You know.
Yeah.
And he's like, he looks exactly the same, still geeky with his glasses on, his camera around his neck.
Yep.
But he's just a complete dick.
Sam Raimi revealed that in 2009, he said that he didn't really have any creative control after a certain point on this movie.
I can see that. I think
When he spoke to The
evident.
Guardian in 2009. And you can tell up on that screen that was the case.
Yeah.
Feel like he was losing control when they shoehorned Venom in.
Yeah.
I know, obviously, he wanted Sandman initially just to be the villain. I mean, I'm glad he wasn't.
I wouldn't have picked Sandman for a standalone villain.
I would have we've already said, so we won't really retread it, but yeah, Harry or Venom, pick a lane.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and it's disappointing because having creative control on 1 and 2 and it being so great, and then 3 coming out and studio meddling, rearing its head, is just like ultimately just the worst thing about Hollywood.
Yeah.
Well, not the worst, maybe not the worst thing, but the in terms of the quality of product, the worst thing that Hollywood can do. You know, studio meddling is honestly, there's so many director's cuts and articles about changes that would have been made to movies that sound amazing, that you'd actually get to the point where you'd be pointing out these things.
Yeah.
If I was a director, I'd be bringing out these examples when studios are like, no, actually, we'll want to do this because demographics and money. And I'd just be like, look, there's so many examples of studios taking it out of the hands of directors and it just going so tits up that, I'd be bringing them out of my pockets. I'd be like, look, Blade Runner director's cut. It's universally canon, not you know what I mean.
I mean,
universally.
Most directors' cuts are.
So
Yeah. Well, another example is Superman 2. They fired Richard Donner, replaced him with Richard Lester, and you can tell which scenes were filmed by Donner and which were filmed by Lester, and it's even though Superman 2, don't get me wrong, is brilliant and the best Superman film,
could have been better.
It's very it looks and feels very disjointed.
It does, yeah.
No, I think, but the thing is, like we were saying, I don't think Spider-Man 3 is as bad as people remember, and also, the bully, the bully Maguire,
infamous,
right, where he,
memed to the nth degree.
He puts on eyeliner and has gothy hair and flicks it back and stuff, and obviously there's the infamous dance sequence where he dances, he finger bangs down the street to no music. Look, and the girls look at him like, what the hell? And then he goes and he comes out of the shop and he's all doing
disco dancing
Saturday
and
Night
Dan
Fever moves. And then he takes Gwen Stacy to the jazz club and does this sort of weird dance routine with a chair.
Yeah.
Where he's tangoing with a chair, and he goes up to the microphone. He's like, "Now dig on this."
It's classic.
I mean, do you know what? I watch that now, and I don't actually cringe. I watch it back now, and I just
laugh.
I think it's funny.
Yeah.
But I was thinking about this the other day, and I was thinking, but you know, this interpretation of the character, right? This Peter Parker is very much a dweeb.
Yes,
right?
yeah.
He's a dorky, dweeby loser, who has this, you know, secret identity as Spider-Man, right? So, and obviously the symbiote takes over his mind, I guess. Well, it certainly changes his attitude.
Yes,
But so maybe, you know, as much as we mock it, maybe in Peter's mind,
This is what cool's like.
this is what cool is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jazz clubs.
Because
and...
he is a dork.
Yeah.
How he doesn't know what cool is. In
No.
his eyes, maybe wearing eyeliner and having a you know,
a Gerard Way party.
Yeah,
and one bit of hair over his eye.
Exactly, and doing you know, going to a jazz club and dancing,
clicking his fingers.
That is
swaying
cool
his hips.
to him.
Yeah.
And maybe, or you know, obviously we know the symbiote sort of corrupted his mind, and has made him so in you know, in Peter's mind, and therefore in the symbiote's mind, that is it is the exact opposite of who Peter is.
Yeah.
Which kind of works in a way.
Yeah.
Because
it's still dorky, but it's what he interprets as dorky
exactly.
Cool.
And also, you know, think about it. I mean, you know, when you wear eyeliner and you have wear your hair in a certain way, you know, no offense, goths, but as much as you preach about being an individual, you're doing that deliberately to stand out, to be noticed, to be seen, right? Because that's why you're doing it. You and then he goes to the jazz club, does that dance routine. Again, he does that to stand out, to prove a point to MJ, to make her jealous, right? So that is essentially the opposite of Peter Parker, because Peter Parker is a very humble, shy, modest, selfless guy who tries to not make any waves, not stand out from the crowd. He's just a guy who wants to blend into the background and, you know, eat a hot dog. That's, you know, so, and that whole dancing in the street thing, as cringe as it was when we first saw it, when I watch it back now, I think yeah, because that is the opposite of what Peter Parker would do.
Yeah.
I still think it like we said before, I still think he should have not had the eyeliner and the hair.
Yeah. Should have just been him doing that.
Yeah.
Where he's just like, this is what I think is cool, and what is being the opposite of what I was because of the symbiote. And,
exactly.
You know, it honestly, if it didn't have the eyeliner and the haircut, I don't think we'd be talking about it as much.
Yeah.
We would probably talk about it because it's happened in the film.
Yeah.
And there would not be like so many memes about Bully Maguire.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, I feel like it would have just been part of the film.
Yeah.
And you would have just been like, oh, Peter Parker, he, you know, like
exactly.
because of the symbiote, he's acting out a bit.
Because the rest of it,
but it is the hair and the eyeliner.
Yeah.
It's not even the attitude; it's the hair and the eyeliner.
The attitude works.
Just
like he's chatting up Elizabeth Banks, and he's chatting up the Russian girl from the apartment next door who's in love with him. And he's you know, he's like a dick to Eddie at work and stuff, which he never would have done.
No, not at all.
Before, because he's entirely, you know, even if Eddie had faked that photograph, he probably, Peter, I 100% convinced he wouldn't have said anything.
Yeah,
that's just not who he is.
No.
He doesn't have a spiteful bone in his body. So yeah, all that stuff kind of works for me. It's just a shame that it wasn't, you know, there wasn't more of it, that the Venom sort of subplot was a subplot.
Yeah, it was a subplot. When it should have been either the main plot or the setup for the next movie.
Yeah.
Is James Franco, does he pull off the redemption in this third movie, or is it not, does it not quite mesh with the rest of the arc from 1 and 2?
Do you know what?
Does he complete the assignment, if you will?
Do you know what? I hate myself for saying this, but I feel like no. But I really, really it really annoys me, and I desperately wanted it to, but I feel like it's just because, again, it's a subplot, and I feel like it's rushed, and it should have been the main focus of the film, or it should have been the main focus of the next film. But I feel like we had such a build up with that, and we knew it was coming from the sort of teaser at the end of 2, and it felt like it wasn't a bit of an anticlimax. Even with him at the start of Spider-Man 3, where he's the new Goblin, that felt like an anticlimax because he just appeared out of nowhere on the glider. He wasn't even wearing a suit. I really didn't like his outfit at all.
No, I feel like the design of him as the Goblin was terrible.
Yeah.
They gave him like a snowboard hoverboard instead of like a glider.
I mean, do you know, it would have been better. It would have been better if he was just wearing the same green suit that Willem Dafoe had.
He should have
Imagine
had
that.
he should have had the suit and then slightly changed.
With like a different helmet
Yeah.
or something, or it was like a different color.
Yeah, just gave him like a black face mask with like generic like swimming goggles.
Yeah, swimming goggles.
And a snowboard
Yeah,
hoverboard.
and a hoverboard. Yeah, I didn't like that. I do like that he turns good at the end and comes and helps Peter.
Yes,
And sort of sacrifices himself.
I feel like it just didn't in this movie where you should have had the you should have had like the majority of the arc because it's been teased up until this point.
Yeah.
I just feel like again it's the same with everything really. The execution in this movie was just lacking that extra bit.
Yeah.
It was just especially with this because it's been built over 2 films.
Yeah, I know.
They had him revealed or like coming out of the chamber
Yeah.
in the beginning, like very early on in the movie. In 3,
Yeah.
that's right, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Whereas
That should have been at the end for me.
at the end or like maybe like midway
Yeah.
where he's like toying with the idea of doing it.
Yeah.
He should be conflicted. I know
Yeah.
he finds it in 2,
Yeah.
but he should just be like conflicted. Like, do I do this? Because obviously of like what happened to my father, and you know. But there's none of that. He's just like jump in straight out, straight into a chase with Peter. Don't know how I found him, but straight in the chase with Peter. And then it just didn't flow as well. It just didn't. There was no real there's no real gravitas to the choice that he was making, and then no real gravitas to the choice he made. Like it was just like, oh, we knew it was going to happen, so just make it happen. It's like, no, it should have been a bit of a build up, or he should have gone in and come out, and there should have been a build up to his first confrontation with Peter.
Yeah.
It was like stepped out and then found Peter on the street, just like a bit of a chase. I was just like, it is all just a little bit like meh. It just like they made wrong decisions. Didn't really execute it as well.
Yeah.
That could be said across the board with any of the villains.
It's a shame as well because I that was the one that I feel like deserved much more.
100% because it's such a personal story.
Yeah, and
It's their best mates, aren't they?
Exactly. They're best friends, and his father was the Goblin, and obviously he thought Spider-Man killed him, and then he found out that Spider-Man was Peter. I mean, you do all these sort of personal relationships, and obviously they both of them had gone out with MJ at various times, and there was that whole conflict, and that actually would have made sense, her being the damsel in distress, if Harry had been the main villain.
Yeah.
Because of course
because it's all personal.
Yeah,
to the 3 of them.
exactly.
Yeah.
And then it would have made and then if a bit like with Doc Ock, if he'd had a sort of change of heart at the end, and we realised that he like I'm not going to become like my father kind of thing, and he sort of rebels against the inner Norman.
Yeah,
inside
and
him.
maybe he set something up that he then changes his mind. Like he set up something that's gonna kill MJ, and he's like, actually,
and then he sacrificed himself
Yeah.
to save her
Yeah.
and Peter.
Yeah.
Thus, that would have been a much more satisfying redemption.
I mean, when he does, when he does die, Harry, it is still a good emotional scene.
And this ties into what I was saying about the theme of this film being forgiveness, because he throws himself in front of I think it's like a spike or something, to save Peter. So I like that, and it is a sad death, and as I said, it's he's forgiven Peter. Peter's forgiven him. Peter then forgives, as much as I don't like it, Peter forgives the Sandman for Uncle Ben's death. And then at the end of the film, when him and MJ, he goes to the club, and
the predominant
the jazz club
scene,
and it's like he MJ forgives him and he forgives her. They forgive each other. So there's a lot about this film that is a lot. There's a lot of forgiveness in this film, and there's a lot of closure, which oddly works considering that when they were making this film,
they were planning a fourth.
Yeah, this does feel like an ending.
Yeah, very much so. It's also uncheesy in doing so, because it's more like acceptance forgiveness rather than just like we're back to being like happy-go-lucky. Like it could have had a cheesier ending where MJ and Peter, again, like in 2, they like run towards each other.
Yeah, it's just like, go get him, Tiger. And
yeah, and do you know what I mean? Like it was very much like a solemn ending.
I completely agree, and do you know what? I really like that ending.
Yes,
I know that again the ending gets criticised because the first 2 films it ends with like him swinging through the city.
We already had enough of that.
Yeah, but this film it goes into the club. I don't even think they say anything.
No, they don't.
He reaches out and she takes his hand.
They just
and
dance,
hug.
don't they?
And then they slow dance.
Yeah.
And then the camera just fades to black. I think on a shot of them just hugging each other.
Yeah.
And it's like the whole culmination of their relationship, their journey, come to an end. And obviously that Harry's just been taken from them, and they've lost so much, but they realise that they've still got each other and all that. And it's a perfect ending to that film, and it also, ironically, not that we knew it at the time, is a perfect ending to that trilogy,
to the universe, anything.
To the Raimi universe,
exactly. Yeah.
I think. So I really like that, and like I said,
you say that it's a perfect ending to that. I don't know if it's a perfect ending to that film, because the film's been a bit all over.
Well, no, a perfect ending would have been a teaser reveal of either Venom or Harry. Yeah.
But
but it works in the context of that film, because that film was so much about
forgiveness and closure.
And also I know again I know we were talking about Tobey Maguire's ugly crying, and there's a lot of that in this film, especially at the end when he forgives Sandman for Uncle Ben's death. Again, I really hate that.
He like flies off in like a sand cloud.
Yeah, like what? Like, I know it's a comic book film, but the physics of that, it makes no sense to me.
Why can he fly?
He can fly. He can be any size. He can be like a giant, but he can also be like normal size, and he can also turn back into a human.
Yeah.
It's like, what? and he can also like manifest into shapes. He's basically like the T-1000. But instead of liquid metal, it's sand.
It's out of place because all of the villains so far in this trilogy have actually been quite grounded.
Yeah.
And even they were obviously planning to have a Vulture and Black Cat in the next movie. which obviously kind of goes against what we were saying about like having Harry or Venom.
Yeah.
But they were wanting Vulture or Black Cat. Again, two villains which are kind of still grounded.
Yeah.
Because they just... With Goblin...
Vulture's just a guy with wings.
Goblin was just like, it's just technology.
Yeah, he's got the
Doc
glider.
Ock, it's technology.
Yeah, he's got the arms.
Harry is technology.
Yeah.
Venom is an alien, I
Yeah.
can understand, but then it's got alien properties,
Yeah.
which are, you can still kind of get your head around.
Yeah, but he has weaknesses like sound.
Yes.
He has flaws.
Whereas Sandman is just whatever we need for the plot.
It's like magic.
Yeah, whatever we need
basically.
for the plot, he can do it.
Yeah.
And it's just like
What the hell?
it feels weird being included in this universe. Feels like it should be in the MCU.
Yeah, or I mean, there's no limit to what he could do. Can he fly? You know, I mean, if he's made out of sand, I don't know. Can he fly in space? Can he fly all around the world?
Yeah.
Can he fly? He could fly into the White House and kill the president.
Literally more dangerous than Nightcrawler from X-Men 2.
But I just think, but that scene, even though he's saying it's Sandman, in a way, I feel like maybe that is also, because it's directly related to Uncle Ben, I feel like maybe that is the moment where Peter forgives himself.
Yeah, he finally gets closure
for
himself.
Uncle Ben.
Yeah.
Because by forgiving Uncle Ben's killer, he's also forgiving himself for his part in his death and the guilt that he feels for that. So, and I really like that because, like I said, I feel like in Spider-Man 2, it's where he actually becomes Spider-Man and accepts that he is Spider-Man. And then in Spider-Man 3, he finally forgives himself for Uncle Ben's death, which is the event that essentially led to him becoming Spider-Man. Because before that, he wasn't like, I'm going to be a superhero.
No, not at all.
I'm
He
going
was
to
like,
dedicate my life to helping people.
He was like, I'm going to make money.
Yeah, I'm going to buy a car.
Yeah.
To get some poontang.
Yeah. As we all would.
100%. So, yeah, there are a lot of elements about 3 that I really like, and as laughable as it is, I don't think it's as bad as everyone thinks it is. And do you know what? I'd rather sit down and watch 3 any day of the week than either of the Amazing Spider-Man films, or, to be honest with you, the 2 MCU films thus far as well. I know it's controversial, but I'd rather watch Spider-Man 3 than Homecoming or Far From Home. I don't think they're bad films. I don't think Tom Holland is a bad Spider-Man, but, you know, I just think it's just, you know...
There's not as much to it as Tobey Maguire's, even by
it's style over substance, and he's... You know, obviously, he you know, it's in the universe, in the MCU, he's, you know, I feel like there's no peril, there's no threat. Any of the Avengers could turn up and save him at any moment. And, you know, Iron Man's always there to help him. And even when Iron Man's dead, he's got like an AI built into his suit. And he's got all these crazy suits that can go into space or can like fly through the air. And they're made out of like, you know, fucking titanium or whatever, God knows what they're made out of. Super MCU technology that seems like out of this world.
MacGuffin technology.
You know, Minority
MCU.
Report style technology. Whereas Tobey Maguire's Peter Parker is he's literally just a dude in a suit, in an outfit that he designed and made himself. And all his powers are internal, including his web, which I like. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, that leads us on to the ratings for this particular iteration of Spider-Man, the Raimi verse, the Raimi trilogy. Now we just have to decide what we're going to mark it out of 5.
Yeah.
And what our denomination is going to be. I think Could we do it out of 5 times he saw Cinderella and made him cry?
I like that. I like that. Yeah, 5 Cinderellas.
5 out of 5 MJ and Cinderellas. That'll be for the first Spider-Man. So for Spider-Man 1, he says it in Spider-Man 1, doesn't he? Yeah, he does.
I cried like a baby when you played Cinderella.
I cried like a baby when you played Cinderella.
Peter, that was first grade.
Spider-Man 1,
Well,
out of 5 Cinderellas, what do you rate Spider-Man?
Well, this is going to be controversial.
Oh, no.
But I am going to give Spider-Man 5 Cinderellas out of 5.
Nice.
I don't often give a 5. I have given a few during the Two Reels podcast. But look, everything, it's pretty much for everything we've said. It's a perfect superhero origin film. It kick-started the comic book movie revolution.
Boom, if anything, yeah.
It's, as you said, it's lean, it's slick, it's compact. It's got one of the best comic book villains, up there with the Joker and Magneto, and honestly, one of my all-time favourites. And I love it. I personally think it's the best one out of the 3. And I feel, and Tobey Maguire is, in my opinion, the best Spider-Man and my favourite. So it's got to be a 5.
And I also give it 5 Cinderellas out of 5. And this one I'm not going to regret by giving it a score that I then think maybe I should have given it more.
Oh my goodness, yes.
I'm getting hounded no end about my my controversial scoring of The Matrix. I don't think I'm going to learn from my mistakes, just like Spider-Man.
Yeah.
So
I honestly can't believe that you didn't give The Matrix a 5 out of 5.
yeah,
That really shocked me. As it's me and Bill, it shocked us to our core.
fair enough.
We're both traumatized by it still to this day. And he hasn't come back since for another podcast. I think because he's so upset
Yeah.
by you and not giving The Matrix a 5. So
Well, we'll see January 1st when we do our Matrix Resurrections podcast. Stay tuned for that one. Honestly, in the new year, that'll be a great one.
Yeah.
Whether the film's any good or not, I can guarantee that the critique of it is going to be
I
brutal.
predict schlocky.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, that's a good prediction. On brand. For Spider-Man 2, I'm going to give the rating for this is going to be out of the power of the sun in the palm of my hands.
Nice.
The power of the sun in the palm of my hand.
So, out of 5 powers of the sun in the palm of my hands, what do you give Spider-Man 2?
Wow. I give Spider-Man 2 4.5 out of the sun in
Power of the sun.
power of the sun in the palm of my hands.
And I also give it 4.5. Power of the suns in the palm of my hand. I think that's pretty cut and dry. And I can't really think of anything extra to say about 2. It's as close to a good sequel.
Yeah.
Oh,
it's a solid sequel.
It's
Solid.
honest. It's honestly, I think it would be lower in the list than some great sequels.
Yeah.
But it'd be in that category of like sequels that don't have sequel-itis. Where it's like it's not going to be Empire, but Aliens.
Yeah.
It's just in that conversation of great sequels.
I completely agree.
Lower, if you're talking maybe top 10 or 20, it's just inside or just outside the top 10.
Spider-Man 2 is brilliant and it's excellent. I just don't.
Doesn't quite make the 5.
It's not. It's not a 5. It's not a 5-star film for me. I thought. I thought it's on par with one, but one just edges it.
Yeah.
I think is so. Yeah.
And for Spider-Man 3, we'll do it out of 5. Dig on this.
Nice.
Now dig on this.
So, what do you give Spider-Man 3, Last in the Trilogy, out of 5 dig on thises?
Oh, this is the most difficult one.
Yeah.
This is the one that I wasn't sure about. God. Oh.
I've never seen you so torn about a rating.
I've haven't been.
You're almost a consummate professional when it comes to delivering your verdict because you've already thought about it for days.
I've thought about this one, but
It's coming to crunch time, and it's still
can
tearing
I
you
say
apart.
I know this is against the rules, but can I say I want to give it 4 dig on thises out of 5.
What?
But
A 4 dig on this.
but what I'm going to give it is 3.5.
Okay.
But I want to give it 4. So for this is an exclusive first time ever 2 reels thing. I'm genuinely torn by my.
See, I can see there's a bit of tension between the fan of the movies and the critic.
Yeah.
Whereas I don't have that.
Yeah, you're right.
For this movie,
you're spot on there. The fanboy inside me wants to give it a 4 because of the love I have for this trilogy.
Yeah.
And Tobey Maguire, but the sort of realist in me, I have to. It's going to have to be a 3.5 for all the reasons we've said. You know, all the criticisms, too many villains. You know, too many questionable decisions regarding certain moments in the film, but it's not as bad as people think.
No.
So I think 3.5 is fair for me.
And I'm going to give it. I'm going to give it 3 dig on this. Just because.
Gosh, man.
It is. That is. Here's the thing. It's not me. It's not me being harsh. It's more me thinking it's definitely better than, say, other films that we reviewed early on when the cinemas first reopened, like Black Widow, Shang-Chi. It's like, it's way better than those.
Yeah.
But it's not enough for me to give it even a 3.5, 4, which a 3.5 is probably about right.
Yeah.
But I've also gone a little bit lower.
I understand.
Because there are movies out there that I'd probably give that a 4, and they are 1 point better than this.
Yeah.
And I've tried to kind of rein in my comic book movie, fanboy kind of goggles, if you will.
Yeah.
Which has been easier of recent because of my comic book movie fatigue.
Yeah.
So I've been. It's been easier to critique this, with a level head.
Yeah.
Say if I'd done this maybe when we first started 2 Reels a year ago, I feel like it probably would have gotten a little bit of a higher score because of that kind of. I'm kind of waning on the genre.
Yeah.
And, it doesn't mean that I'm not going to... If there's a great one that comes out, I'm not going to enjoy it because, I'm still able to just enjoy a comic book film if it's just good, But unfortunately, there's been a lot of schlock and a lot of terrible. I'm looking at you, shiternals. And it's just been a little bit easier, yeah, just to critique it as a movie, not as a movie of my childhood that I did enjoy at the time, even for its bad points. I was able to overlook it a little bit more when I was a lot younger, when I was 16 or something. But yeah, I have to give it a 3. Yeah, I just have to give it a 3.
Yeah.
And I feel that's kind of as much as I can give it, even when being harsh. So I think that's just about right for me. And this will be the last time I say it, but it's not as bad as you remember, and it's not as bad as the internet will have you believe, and Bully Maguire memes will have you believe as well. So, which is always, it's definitely worth a rewatch, and is something that will entertain you more than a lot of the current MCU stuff that's coming out in the cinema. The series is a little bit different.
Yeah,
I'm liking the series like Loki and WandaVision because they are different, and they're a series, like a short series, and they're not a movie. It's a little bit different. So compared to the films that are coming out, totally a lot better than Black Widow and Shang-Chi. In fact, probably both of them combined, in terms of scores. Yeah, so I have to give it a 3.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, as Uncle Ben says, with great power comes great responsibility. We have a responsibility to give fair and accurate ratings for films, no matter how much we may have a sort of
warm and fuzzy feeling for them.
Secret soft spot for them.
And especially we both have one for this.
Yeah.
Like it's I know it's
and that's why I've elected to do the Raimi trilogy with you for Spider-Man month.
Yeah, so and next up we got Amazing Spider-Man, and I can tell you right now it's going to be a different podcast.
Oh yes.
And then I believe it is Into the Spider-Verse is after that, and then Spider-Man Homecoming and Far From Home, before we get on to Spider-Man No Way Home, which is going to be all 4 of us.
The first 4-way Two Reels podcast.
Yeah, to just absolutely dissect this.
Yeah.
I don't know. This is probably one of the most hyped movies in forever. I don't know if Endgame and Infinity War were very much of this ilk in terms of hype, but because it is Spider-Man specific and potentially all 3 generations of Spider-Man,
potentially,
it just opens such a Pandora's box of hype, and just there is an aura about this movie which is just unmatched, I think.
Yeah, I mean, maybe since the first Spider-Man, the hype about that.
Yeah.
This is probably the most hyped Spider-Man film since Spider-Man. Yeah.
Which is crazy. And the nostalgia of having potentially the other Spider-Man in it, especially
and that's probably
Tobey.
Why. Because Tobey's coming back. Allegedly.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah, spoiler.
But, we know for a fact that Willem Dafoe's returning as Goblin.
And
we know for a fact Alfred Molina's returning as Doc Ock. We know for some reason Jamie Foxx is returning as Electro. Why, I've no idea. Doesn't make any fucking sense.
Yeah.
But I guess if they're including, well,
we'll get to that on the 18th.
It's odd, isn't it? It's odd. It's I get it, multiverses, but at the same time I don't get it. Because it's establishing 2 completely different movie franchises as being canon when they're but just in different universes, which I find odd. I get maybe doing one like one different universe,
Yeah.
but two different universes, two different movie franchises coming together, that can get complicated and weird.
Isn't that weird?
Isn't that weird?
Isn't that weird?
But, of course, listeners, as we know, and as I'm sure we all agree, none of this matters anyway, because there's only one Spider-Man, mate, and his name is Tobey Maguire. Spider Pig, does whatever a Spider Pig does. Spins a web, no he can't, because he's a pig. Look out, it's the Spider Pig.